Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto merged with 10 Tails in Fairy Tail. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Fantasy Magician and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Jinchuriki, the power of human sacrifice. For the longest time in his life, the term described him perfectly, much to his distaste. He had been the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox since he was a baby. His parents sacrificed him for the sake of the village and its people. Strangely, he never hated his parents for sacrificing him. He reasoned that if he'd been in their position, he would have done the same. Seriously, there were not many options when a giant fox was rampaging through your beloved village. The previous Jinchuriki was dying, and he was the only nearby candidate to become the next Jinchuriki due to his Uzumaki blood. They had to protect the hollow piece, the power balance between the elemental countries. It was the same hollow piece that was the source of his sorrow and suffering as a Jinchuriki. It had to be changed, that was his vow. It started when he was 8 and struggling to make himself worthy for Konoha. He wanted to be more than a mere Jinchuriki. He climbed Konoha's ranks as a seal master and shinobi fairly quickly. He, unlike most young shinobi, didn't focus solely on his military rank. Instead, he also pursued a strong position in politics. Because in the end, both soldier and shinobi listened to the politician in power. With much careful planning, he was able to carve out his own unique spot, still a shinobi, but separate from the regular forces. He built his reputation among the royalties of Elemental Continent, and it got to the point that even the daimyo of Hai no Kuni trusted him more than the Hokage. It was not without a price, though. His political machinations destroyed his grandfather-grandson relationship with the Sandaime Hokage. It wasn't like the old Kage didn't love him anymore, but Naruto forced the Sandaime to see him as a political figure that could be a close ally or a dangerous enemy. Naruto had become another Danzo. Someone who would help him to protect Konoha but wouldn't hesitate to undermine him if their ideologies ever clashed. The Sandaime couldn't help but long for the young boy with bright smile instead of this powerful shinobi and politician. He had tried to introduce Jiraiya and Kakashi to Naruto in hope the boy would open up his heart again. But in Naruto's eyes, Jiraiya was not his godfather or his father's teacher, and Kakashi was not a surrogate brother or a student of his father. They were simply Jiraiya of Sannin and Sharingan Kakashi, no more no less. Naruto didn't hate them, after all, you couldn't hate people that you had never interacted with for most of your life. He did not know them at all. He was just not interested in who they were to his parents. If they wanted to earn his trust, they would have to work for it. Even after the Sandaime's death during the Chunin exam invasion, he didn't treat them any better. They had not earned his respect, and the death of the Sandaime couldn't change that fact. Perhaps ignoring them was his petty revenge for leaving him alone when he was young. They had never been there for him when he wanted friends and family, but when they had finally come around, he had already found his own friends and family. He rarely gave them his time. If he had spare time in the midst of his busy schedule, he would spend it with his friends and disciples. Kakashi and Jiraiya were his comrades, not friends or family. In spite of his distant disposition to them, Naruto knew he would regret treating them that way, yet did nothing to change his attitude. His hypothetical regrets became reality few years later when both Jiraiya and Kakashi fell in the Fourth Shinobi World War. They died with regret in their heart that they never make up their mistakes to him, and he hated himself for letting them go like that. Unfortunately, they were just the first deaths of many that came later as the war went on. In the war against Akatsuki, they were the first sacrifices. And in the end of everything, he became the last sacrifice. Gyuin. He could hear voices in the distance, his comrades were calling his name as he sealed the last of the Juubi's chakra within him. He couldn't see them clearly as they approached or whose warm hands were holding his colder one. I did it, he croaked weakly, the Juubi Madara won't bother us anymore. Baka, we know that. Just shut up and stay still while the medics heal you, someone told him. He couldn't make out the voice in his delirious state. He started to say but stopped. He wanted to say sorry that he wasn't going to make it, but he knew he was not sorry at all for saving everyone's lives at the cost of his own. Someone called him an idiot again. Who was that? Kurama. No, he was absorbed into the Juubi, and the fox agreed he'd rather die with the Juubi for the good of the world. The sage of 6 paths would approve of their decision. Kurama, always the daddy's boy. I want to sleep, first let me rest, he mumbled sleepily as his eyes fluttered close, and not even the warm teardrops falling on his eyelids could convince him to open his eyes again. As much as he wanted to, he was too tired and in too much pain to do so. Apparently, death was a calmer moment than he thought, and voices started to fade as if he was being taken away far away. That guttural growl undoubtedly belonged to the Juubi. Apparently, the primordial monster was not happy about dying. He didn't know what the monster was ranting about, but it seemed angry and grasping for something. His brain was still working. Evidently, he wasn't dead yet. The Uzumaki clan's vitality was such a pain at times like this. He knew he had to die soon and bring the abomination down with him. I am God. Now it made an intelligible sound, but Naruto couldn't care less. Why couldn't the damned beast pipe down and die already? Another world. Body. What body it was talking about? Toast. The blonde's body was beyond repair, not even Kurama could fix him at this state. Not to mention the seal would. Bry arg. That's it. Shut up. He shouted furiously, pushing his body to sit up. Wait. Sit up. When he was about to seal the monster, the Juubi grabbed him and crushed his legs. His bones were completely shattered the last time he checked. Whoa. Calm down, kid. Naruto turned to the side of the bed. An old man was flailing his arms and looking at him as if he had grown second head. Naruto clamped his mouth shut and the old man let out a sigh of relief. He looked around wildly, trying to recognize the place, but failed to remember if he had ever been anywhere like this. It was a wooden house, but nothing like one of Yamato's Mokuton houses. There were also a number of objects he had never seen before. It was like he was somewhere foreign, but how he could get here. And better yet, how was he alive? He took a deep breath and began to speak, but received a flat stare in reply. I don't know your language, kid, the man told him. Naruto blinked owlishly. He came across similar language from country far away to the west of the elemental continent. Temujin, he recalled, spoke in this language, but the accent was different. My apologies for my outburst, but may I know where this place is? That was the most important thing he had to know, so screw manners. Ines village, the old man trailed off as if it was common knowledge. He blinked owlishly at that, where is this village exactly? And how did I get here? Near the west border of Fiori country, kid, I found you near the river and I thought you were dead, but then you started breathing again, the old man explained with a huff. This is a small village and I know all boys your age. I've never seen you around though, so you must be from somewhere else. Naruto mentally searched for country named Fiori on his mental map of the elemental continent, but he found no country with that odd name. Ignoring the location situation, Naruto had to ask about the one thing that had really been bugging him since the start of his conversation with the old man. Why did you call me a kid? He was 16, but due to his height and mannerism, he was often mistaken to be in his mid-20s. Anyone under 10 is a kid and you look pretty scrawny to me. The old man pointed out. Naruto's eyes widened in shock and he quickly looked down at his body. He was naked aside from the white blanket that covered his modesty, but his biggest concern was that his supposedly calloused hands with long fingers which used to hold sealing brushes and weapons had now become the chubby soft hands of a child. He looked to the opposite side of the bed and saw his reflection on the window. It was dark outside, so the window showed him a clear reflection of a young face with chubby cheeks that he hadn't seen of himself for quite some time. He was a kid. All of his shinobi mental training was thrown out of the window as Naruto voiced his shock and outrage. Erg. The old man silently wondered why he ended up with such a noisy kid who was afraid of his own reflection. It took Naruto 1 full hour to regain his composure and come to terms with his situation. He then spent another 5 minutes apologizing to the nice old man who introduced himself as Matthew. He had a wife named Lily who was bringing some food and drink for Naruto. My name is Naruto. He introduced himself, Uzumaki Naruto. Weird name, but then again you're a foreigner, Lily said as she set down a cup of tea and a bowl of soup. So, what happened to you? You see, I was fighting a 10-tailed primordial monster hell-bent on destroying humanity because a princess stole chakra. I sealed it to my body and when I thought I was dying, but apparently I am a kid now and not even in the same world again. I was in a merchant caravan, you see, he began sheepishly as he told a cover story he just thought up. He told them he was the child of a rich merchant's maid who came from a distant country in the east. On the way to some big city, the capital perhaps, their caravan was attacked by bandits. The bandits killed everyone and he only escaped by throwing himself to a nearby river. Tears pooled in his eyes as he continued his story, stammering between his sobs. Matthew ate up a sob story, not doubting a single word. Poor boy, no wonder you were distraught when you wake up. Did he feel guilty deceiving this nice old man and his wife? Nope. He couldn't tell the truth, but more than anything, he was a shinobi, meaning deception was at the core of his profession. Besides, he had more important troubles to worry about than deceiving nice old couples and being lost in a foreign world. Yubi, Shinju. The damn Jubi was also alive and kicking inside him. Well, not so much kicking as it had gone into some sort of dormant state. What the thing did that made them end up here, he didn't know, and he was in no mood to go to his mindscape to ask. It was not like the Jubi would answer him anyway, even if it was awake. At least now wherever his comrades were, they were safe from the beast. He could die happy knowing that, so for now. For now rest, child. Lily cooed, patting his messy spiky hair gently. I will sing you a lullaby, sweet dream. He was too old for a lullaby, but in his whole life, he'd never had anyone sing him one. In this new world perhaps it would be nice to have a new life too. And so he indulged the old woman and was lulled to sleep by the foreign-sounding lullaby. Lily's voice was not the nicest he had ever heard, and the song was nothing special, but it was kind and gentle to his ears. Shinobi's World. Nara Shikamaru sighed wearily as he put down his brush to look over the record of history he just wrote. Of course, since he was no historian, someone else would rewrite his, gathering all records to write the official record of the greatest war in Shinobi world. It has been 3 months since the end of 4th Shinobi War and the death of Uzumaki Naruto. He was the greatest hero who sacrificed himself to seal the primordial monster known as the Juubi and died with it to protect us all. However, his body disappeared without a trace before our very eyes. Seal Masters speculated that it was perhaps meant to happen since Uzumaki Naruto wanted himself and the Juubi to completely disappear from this world. It also could have been that his body was destroyed because of the Juubi's chakra, or perhaps the stress and injury he had put his body through after fighting the Juubi for 10 days without rest. Whatever the reason for his death and body's disappearance, his heroic death is the beginning of a new era in the shinobi's world. I wish Shikamaru gritted his teeth as he wiped his tears, he would have survived, but then again, he always wanted to die as a hero. Unknown world. It was official. He was in a completely different world. When Naruto woke up, he was very disoriented, so he didn't notice a lot of things. However, now that he was clear-headed, he could pinpoint a huge difference between this world and his own. This whole world was abundant with nature chakra, or Eterno as people of this world called it. He really had to thank Lily for being so kind as to lend him a world history book while he was in bed. Back to the history of this world, the closest thing to shinobi this world had were called mages. Although from the little he could glimpse from the book about mage and their magic power, they were closer to sages in his world than shinobi. It seemed the mages of this world absorb magic power from their surroundings and contain it within their body. If that was right, they didn't use their own spiritual and physical power at all, except for just some minuscule amount of it when compared to their use of nature energy. It was very probable that their body just evolved in a different way than humans in the shinobi world, especially if the percentage of humans with this magic power was just around 10% of the population. In his world everyone could use chakra with the proper training. Then again, considering the history of how humans gained the ability to use chakra in his world, it was possible that originally only a small percentage of the population was able to use chakra too. Regardless of all that though, there was one thing he had to decide first. What he was going to do next. Try to find his way home. As much as he missed his friends, coming back as the Jinchuriki of the Juubi was going to start another conflict in his world. Now that all the hidden villages had lost their Bijuu, the power balance was back to square one, so his existence would only jeopardize that. Not to mention that he didn't want to give the Bijuu back as weapons to the hidden villages. So returning to his home was out of question. He was a little surprised he could give up on returning home so easily, but perhaps he was being selfish and was tired of his old world. That brought up another question. What he was going to do in this world. He was free now. He had no obligation as a Jinchuriki to his village. He was no longer the child of prophecy. He was just Uzumaki Naruto. He was free. But oddly, even with his newfound freedom, he didn't feel like whooping and running around in circles, praising all the deities. He felt weird that he had no obligation whatsoever to anyone. Perhaps he owed a debt to the old couple, but paying back a few days of hospitality was nothing compared to what he had to bear in his short 16 years of life. He had never been free for his whole life, and the prospect scared him a little. Speaking of freedom, he had never managed to fulfill that promise to Kurama to free him. He's still here with me, he murmured softly, placing his hand above the seal. Well, it seems I am not that free if I still have one more promise to fulfill. He would find a way to fulfill that promise, one way or another. For those who didn't know Forlorn Storyteller, it's another account of mine, and Naruto in this story is the same Naruto from Unsealing Legacy. The end of Naruto dying with sealing Juubi within him is an alternate ending I planned before, but nah, the story diverged too much, so I can't use it anymore, but it's such a waste, so I use it for this story. You don't have to read Unsealing Legacy to read this though, but in short, Unsealing Legacy Naruto is a paranoid, skeptical, he has sarcastic sense of humor, but very warm to those he liked. He also prone to fret over his loved ones. I have not specified the year of his arrival in this world of FT, simply because I am still contemplating it. But Naruto is definitely much older than Natsu and Ko, at least by 10 years mentally, as his body is a kid again now. There would be 2 times skip until we get to X784, the year prior to Tenryjima arc. Theory of chakra and magical energy, Eterno, mentioned here is a rough theory in Naruto's part, not a solid one. So don't be surprised if later I launch another theory that have more detail, but a little different from one written here. Next. The daughter of rain. At that day her tiny cold hand accepted his warm and larger one, with a promise that she would never be alone again. That was her first warm memory in the middle of cold rain, and even though rain had not stopped following her for the first time in her life, she was happy. Yuvia had never seen the sun, but she imagined it to be just like him, warm and gentle. He was her family, a father, a brother, a friend, a teacher and her only companion for a long time. First tale. Daughter of the Rain. It had been almost 5 years since he came to this world, and physically he was back to 13 years old again. What a wonderful age to return to when you started to grow facial hair and also hello again hormone. Not that it had ever bothered him that much, what did he do when he was 13 the first time around? Oh yes, he was busy scheming in the background, training his ass off, got Shisui and Itachi out of trouble, what else? Designing seals like a mad Uzumaki would in their worst day, and lots of scheming. He didn't even notice puberty, much to his friend's chagrin. The boys, especially Shisui, Itachi didn't give a damn since he was the same, and Jiraiya too, they were severely disappointed he had zero interest in dating. The girls were frustrated that he friend-zoned them to death. Even now the idea of relationship didn't cross his mind, simply because he enjoyed his single status to give it up now. There was also his long life mission to complete, he promised Kurama that long ago. He believed that in this world, where nature chakra eterno was plentiful in the air, he had better chance to accomplish his goal. He had to train his body again to regain physical power and speed back to prime condition. It was not easy to train with body of a child when you had memory of an adult body. Another issue he had to solve after he left Matthew's care was his origin, he couldn't walk around without citizenship in Fiore forever. Surprisingly, getting himself a citizenship of Fiore was not hard, or rather it was too easy to get because he could just waltz into immigration and forged a request with fake age that already approved. Apparently mages and stealth didn't go hand in hand with each other most of the time, so their security was not as good as those installed in Elemental Continent. They were also very reckless when it came to background check, so he had no fear that his real identity would be exposed. This world was too peaceful, by his world's standard at least. According to history record, this world had not seen war in scale as great as Shinobi War for almost 2 centuries. Small conflicts broke out sometimes, but it never got big enough to raise concern. Then again, they didn't have shinobi here, strangely he had seen mages dressing in shinobi-looking attires, but not the skill. Mages he had seen for the last 5 years were quirky, especially that guy who made his own private path with walking through walls. What was the name of that guy again? Gil something. The guy even asked him how to get back to Fairy Tail, what kind of mage needed help to get back to his own guild. Oh well, it was not like he knew better about being normal anyway. By the time he was 13 the first time around he was an adult in teenage body after all. Jinchuriki or naughty had always been an abnormality. It's raining again. Naruto paused from sipping his warm tea, glancing sideways towards 2 women chatting on the table behind his. He was under a hinge that made him look like Tenzo dressed in simple white shirt and black pants, and no one spared a glance at him. He was having a late lunch in this cafe, and he already heard almost everyone in town complaining about rain. It was odd, as he had been in neighboring town next to this one for 1 month, and it was a very dry summer there, but the moment he stepped his foot to this town, it was raining cats and dogs. This rain is so gloomy, and at this rate our laundry would never dry, the brunette housewife cried dramatically. The plumper housewife who sat across the brunette one nodded in agreement, I know. Then she leaned in to whisper to her friend, did you know that apparently this rain is caused by a cursed orphan girl our local orphanage accepted recently? They weren't loud, but Naruto had better hearing than normal human, so he could hear them well. A cursed girl. I know that girl, my boy is in the same class as that girl, and he said that little girl is so creepy. I saw her once when I picked up my son in school. She added, that girl's skin is so pale like she has never been under the sun. She paused then continued in hushed whisper, maybe she is not even a human. I think so too, maybe she is a monster. Shouldn't someone do something to get rid of that girl? We can't live in this weather forever. She moaned. Naruto's eyes narrowed at that, even in this world, human is easily wrapped in their perception and never bother to look deeper before they start blaming a child. He sipped his tea and stood up, leaving his half-eaten was about to walk past the 2 gossiping women, but stopped mid-step. The 2 women noticed Naruto was staring at them with disgust, and they cowered. You should be ashamed as a mother to speak so ill about an orphan, imagine if it's your child in her position. He said coldly before he walked away from the 2 sputtering women. Unexpectedly it was not that hard to detect one abnormally strong chakra, he was not used to call it magical energy yet, in the middle of this rain. He expected it to be like looking for Nagato in the middle of his rain, because this rain was so rich with energy that looking for the source should be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Whoever caused this rain was abnormally strong and in tune with water element. Naruto couldn't help but felt his heart was gripped with sad nostalgia when he stood in front of an orphanage building. It seemed those women were right that the little girl was the culprit of this rain. With heavy heart he jumped to the roof of the orphanage and he could feel the strongest energy concentrate on the backyard. Then he saw her, a girl that couldn't be older than 6, crying in the middle of this cold rain. She was crouching on the ground, bathed in rain and so alone. Normally a caretaker should have carried the girl inside before she caught cold, but it seemed no one cared. Of course they didn't, if they cared this girl wouldn't be there and crying her eyes out. Someone. Anyone. Why am I alone? Echoes from his past made his whole body numb. Recalling how alone he was in the middle of the crowd, their accusing gaze weighing down on him in every step he took. Someone should have finished that Kyuubi brat off sooner or later. Shouldn't someone do something to get rid of her? Naruto knew he shouldn't involve himself with people of this world too closely, it had consequence, and with it came responsibility. However, he would never turn his eyes away from this lonely child, and he did what he hoped someone would when he was alone in that hell. He jumped down from the rooftop and landed in front of the crying child. She cried and cried, clutching on Teru Bozu doll on her chest. It was not a rare occurrence, and caretakers had stopped caring to console the rain girl. She also heard the caretaker wondered if it was possible to transfer her to other orphanage because they couldn't stand the constant raining she caused. A few of them consoled her in the first week, but as rain poured down for months, even adults started to get annoyed by the constant rain. Everyone hated her because of rain was always following her around. It had been that way since her birth, and it was the reason everyone rejected her. At first she thought it was just her imagination, but even a child like her learned when she was transferred for the 5th time in 1 year to another orphanage. This orphanage was out of luck though, because orphanage in surrounding town already received news of cursed rain girl and would reject her presence. What grieved her most was she couldn't control the rain and she was hated for it. And also because bit by bit she could understand why they hated her rain. Constant rain destroyed their crops, making their life difficult because streets and ground became wet and slippery, people also could easily get sick. It was not just gloomy, she caused trouble with her rain. She didn't want this rain anymore. Someone. Anyone. Help. Suddenly something warm touched her teary eyes and she was snapped out of her miserable thought. Hello little one, why are you crying in the middle of rain? You will get sick. Her deep blue eyes snapped open and she was greeted by a warm smile of a stranger. Juvia will not get sick because of rain, she muttered timidly, because Juvia is a rain girl. The stranger blinked owlishly, is Juvia your name? She nodded, so you're the one who caused this rain. She nodded hesitantly again, waiting for dismissal and rejection for causing the rain. No wonder it feels magical, he chuckled softly. Juvia is sorry. Why? The stranger queried. Juvia swallowed, rain makes everyone sad and it's gloomy. It also troubles everyone in town. She cried again and it rained even harder in response. She didn't know how long she cried and she didn't notice the stranger had used his umbrella to shelter her from the rain even though she didn't need it. The stranger was drenched as a result as the umbrella he had was only enough for one person. He also looked unbothered by the rain and his wet clothes and more than anything he stayed by her side and comforting her with warm hug and gentle pat. There don't cry little one, it's not your fault. She sobbed, it's Juvia's fault. And everyone hates Juvia because of her rain. She didn't know this person, but he was the first who stayed with her in the middle of downpour willingly, even though he could leave anytime he wanted. Juvia is alone. All alone. Hick. Hick. His eyes softened at that, then I will stay with you little one, so you won't be alone anymore. Her cries stopped at that, it was not like her sadness stopped too, but she was dumbstruck by the stranger's words. Why would you stay with Juvia? Won't the rain bother you too? Rain? He laughed out loud at that, it's just rain, water falling from the sky, he shrugged, it won't bother me, I have lived with things worse than wet clothes and a little of shower. Just like that he diminished her worry, and I will stay because me too, I don't want to be alone. As soon as the last sentence was uttered, little Juvia looked at his eyes and she saw the same eyes as hers boring to hers. A pair of eyes that know of loneliness and rejection. Let's go Juvia, from now on you are part of my family. At that day her tiny cold hand accepted his warm and larger one, with a promise that she would never be alone again. That was her first warm memory in the middle of cold rain, and even though rain had not stopped following her for the first time in her life, she was happy. Juvia had never seen the sun, but she imagined it to be just like him, warm and gentle. He was her family, a father, a brother, a friend, a teacher and her only companion for a long time. 3 months later. Naruto found himself enjoying being a teacher again, it had always been his passion to pass on his knowledge to the next generation. And more than anything he enjoyed her company, he loved to have someone close he could protect and showered with attention. Juvia was a smart girl and very eager to learn. Although he suspected she was more eager to please him in any way she could than learning magic, he get used to call it that and sealing arts, which was why she always forced herself to excel. He had to assure her again and again that he adopted her not because he wanted a talented disciple, he wanted Juvia to be herself. He didn't want Juvia to go through what he had in his childhood, so eager for attention and acknowledgement that he forgot that there were people who loved him unconditionally. That he didn't have to be the best seal master and shinobi, he could simply be Uzumaki Naruto. They were resting in a small inn near Crocus, usually Naruto avoided the capital because Naruto disliked crowded place. However, the sight of absolute delight on Juvia's face to see the beautiful capital convinced him that it was worth it. He wanted Juvia to relax, but after playing around the capital of blooming flower Juvia declared she had enough playing, so she should continue her study. Since they came back to the inn this afternoon, Juvia's eyes had been glued on scroll after scroll. Juvia Naruto began, take a break, it's almost your bedtime. He told her gently. Juvia didn't pry her eyes from the scroll, her eyes teary from frustration. No Juvia will get this down tonight. Juvia will not disappoint Shishu. She said determinedly. Naruto sighed, now he understood how his vassals felt when he stayed up all night to study sealing arts. Juvia, you have done well, he assured her. Juvia fidgeted at that, but Juvia wants Shishu to be happy. I am happy to have you by my side. He assured her. Now tell me Juvia, what I have to do to make you happy. Juvia shook her head frantically, Shishu has done enough. Juvia only want to be with you. Naruto gave her an amused smile, then that's all I wanted too. Juvia looked happy, but Naruto could see hesitation in her eyes. He knew what she felt, she didn't want to take his kindness for granted. Juvia, the reason I teach you sealing art is because it's something I love and it's family tradition that will mark you as part of my family. She tensed at that, however, I will always see you as part of my family, even if you refuse to learn it. Juvia shook her head frantically, Juvia loves to learn sealing arts. Don't stop teaching Juvia. She pleaded. I won't. Naruto assured her, beside my other reason to teach you sealing arts is my hope for you to accomplish your dream. Juvia tilted her head to the side in confusion, she had no dream and she was happy as long as she was with him. Isn't it your dream to see the clear sky one day? At that she rubbed the silver bracelet with seal carving on her wrist, it was a magical power restrainer he gave her to help her control her rain. It stopped the rain, but dark clouds still darkened the sky above her and when she was too emotional the rain would broken again. It was not perfect but better to her, much better. After a few months of her adoption, Juvia learned that it was raining because she couldn't control her magic that closely connected to her emotion. She was happy that she was no longer alone, so why the rain won't stop? Then again it would be too selfish of her to ask for more after she got Shishu in her life. Juvia is fine now, it's fine if Juvia could never see clear sky. She mumbled timidly. Juvia is happy, but Juvia is confused why it didn't stop. Because you're still hurting Juvia, he answered. Juvia looked hurt that Shishu said she was still hurting because those people hated her. She didn't care. She had Shishu now. But Juvia isn't. After Juvia met Shishu, Juvia is not haunted by rain as constantly anymore, we travel from place to place, so no one is troubled by Juvia's rain. He stood up from his chair and patted her head comfortingly before enveloping her in gentle embrace she loved. Juvia, pain in our heart is not that easy to heal, sometimes it takes forever to forget and forgive. Juvia couldn't deny it, as deep in her heart she still hated people who abandoned her because of something she couldn't control. I was just like you years ago, even though peoples who used to treat me with disdain started to hail me as their hero. Juvia tensed as she recalled her teacher's life, he didn't tell her everything, but just from little of it, Juvia knew he was also suffering of isolation like she was. They used to be alone in the middle of the crowd. He had it rough, much harder than her, and yet he strived to live and to be acknowledged. Unlike her who kept crying and giving up. She thought he was amazing, too wonderful to be a mere human, but he told her that he was as human as she was. I can't easily forgive them because deep down even though I know I have to forgive, I can't help but remember when I was all alone and crying for help, not even one of them look at me, my existence is denied. He murmured, nothing can make me forget the pain, but you see the wound in our heart can be healed. He placed his hand above his heart. And one day I believe the wound in your heart would be healed too. Her tiny hands wrapped around his, really? Really, the blonde echoed, perhaps it will take a long time, but that day will come for someone to bring you out of the dark cloud and show you the sunny clear sky you always wanted to see. Juvia frowned at that, Juvia thinks Juvia already see clear sky in your eyes and the sun in your hair, Shishu. The shinobi laughed out loud at that, he always did whenever she said she didn't have to see sunny clear sky, because she saw it in him. I am flattered, my cute disciple. But I am sure the real thing is much better looking than I do. He quipped with a grin. Juvia huffed, no, it won't. She exclaimed stubbornly. Naruto turned his back on her and curled up to a ball. My cute disciple don't believe me anymore sob sob. I am such a bad teacher. Her face morphed in shock comically. I make Shishu cry. She squeaked. I hope you like Naruto's personality. I don't want ordinary cool Naruto, he has a few screw loose on his head. I am sure you wonder why I just jumped 5 years ahead from prologue, because to be honest, I don't want Naruto walk around in henge forever. 13 seems to be a normal age to walk around unsupervised if you're a mage in FT universe. And also expect Juvia's personality to be different from canon. As much as I like canon Juvia to be raised by Naruto, make it impossible to make her have personality that completely the same with canon. She will stop speaking in third person for sure, because while it's cute it's a product of her botched social life, so it will go too. Another issue I want to address is pairing Owuo the ban of all author of adventure fanfic. Even so, unlike Naruto where the love drama is like something you can forget after so much fighting. In FT it's a seasoning that exists in every arc, so it can't go away completely. Beside, I think I have plenty of multi-chapter adventure story like Past, Unsealing Legacy, and Saint Tenma where I kick almost all romance vibe out of it. The only long story I didn't do romance filter on is Chronicle of Hope, but I think it has much smaller fandom and readers compared to this X-over story that I expect have as much potential as Unsealing Legacy. So I am planning to have all canon pairing, or rather semi-canon pairing we have in FT by now. I think they're called the 4 top pairing of FT, which is Nalu, Gruvia, Gale and Jirza. And YEAH, I am a huge fan of Gruvia and Jirza, and I know there are people who dislike these pairings, but I will add some twist in their dynamic so it can be enjoyable. Not sure about Nalu because I am indifferent about this ship. If it happens, fine, not, also fine to me. I feel the same for Naruhina and Narasaku Unfortunately. I do toying with the idea that by the time Naruto passed away in his world, he actually already have them both as his wives lol, or we can have someone else, but I imagine it's political marriage to ensure Uzumaki line go on sat to Saiyan. Unsealing Legacy, I can't imagine my Naruto to be involved in strong romance. I will open my option for Connor Murahin though, but I am afraid he is going to be too old mentally, as by now he already go all fatherly on Juvia. BTW, in case of misunderstanding, the reason we have Team Natsu as character is simply because their main character of FT and major focus in every arc, so like it or not, they would be constant presence. They're not going to join Naruto like Juvia did. They are fine with Fairy Tail, Urza Included. One question. Do you want me to continue Naruto's journey pre-FT canon timeline some more than 2 to 3 chapters, or you want me to skip to FT canon timeline X 784? Please state your opinion in your review. And also, anyone want me to change the title? I still want to keep the Foxtails bit though. Next. Little Prince of Another World. Juvia stared in awe at the boy on his arms. Shisu, is it normal to see a boy falling from the sky? Juvia thought only waterfall from the sky. Naruto looked at the unconscious boy on his arms and strange stick that strapped on his back. Well, in my homeland, raining men and blood is pretty common. Juvia blinked at that, but I am sure in Earthland, it's unusual, but he didn't fall from the sky, but from a hope in the sky. Naruto corrected. Juvia hummed at that, but he is really lucky that you caught him when he fell. Shishu. Naruto rubbed his throbbing cranium, he was so focused in Juvia's training that he didn't watch out that someone fell on his head. I am not sure it count as catching him if I did it with my head, he has a pretty hard head. Second tale. Little Prince from Another World. It was hard to not feel envious when he saw his newest disciple, Juvia, and all of her watery glory running across the lake, squealing in delight. It took him days of training and dripping wet from head to toe to get water walking right. Juvia only wobbled a little in her first step, standing right in her second, and walked like she owned the place in her third. Then again, teaching Juvia water walk was like teaching a fish how to swim. He kinda figured this out already, which was why he taught Juvia water walk first before tree climbing. Since she had large reserve, Naruto planned to teach her chakra, magical energy, control backward. Although to Juvia, walking in the water was no different from walking on the ground obviously. He called her, Juvia, that's enough, come over here. The water girl obliged and quickly ran back to the shore, as eager as ever to please him. He was happy she was such an obedient disciple, but he was worried that she was too submissive to people she liked. Her problem was actually pretty simple. Juvia was a lonely girl, she was young, she needed a lot of attention, and depraved of that because of her reign. So as soon as she got it, she latched on person who gave her said attention, namely him. He understood why she acted like this, because he had lonely childhood too and went through this period. He was not submissive though, but overly protective, and some people back in Konoha learned that the hard way. Literally hard for Danzo, and Naruto thoroughly enjoyed watching the crippled geezer walking funny for days after he was teleported to hot spring full of bathing Kunoichi. Shishu. He was snapped out of his musing and turned his attention back to Juvia, his disciple and current main concern. Juvia's submissiveness had to go sooner or later and replaced by independence. The best way to do that was to give her more confidence and became stronger in heart and body was the simplest and most traditional way to achieve that. Of course there was another way but with his militant background, he could work on this better. Juvia had to see herself as more than unwanted rain girl, she had to see her worth he saw in her. She was perhaps the most powerful water user that could give an even Niadame a run for his money and that potential shouldn't be wasted because of self-confidence issue. He looked at her in the eye and he saw an eager and talented disciple. Juvia, he began, I will teach you how to climb tree without your hand. She bobbed her head up and down enthusiastically, not even questioning the possibility of defying gravity. Yes. Shishu. He showed her how to do it, using hand seal ram to focus energy, a general term he preferred to use, to the sole of their feet. Mages in general seemed to use botched version of hand seals, some just used ridiculous hand gesture for theatrics, although the use of it in molding magic seemed to be genuinely needed from what he had seen. Then again it was perhaps because mage usually was specialized in one type of magic, while in shinobi, even though specialization existed, they used 12 hand seals universally, so their use of hand seal must be more refined and standardized. Splat. Naruto facepalmed when he saw Juvia instead of landing on her feet like he taught her to, she fell face first to the ground and literally go splat on the ground. He approached her and gave her a poke on the head. A habit of Itachi that rubbed off on him. She pouted at him cutely in response. Juvia. Land on your feet. He chided her sternly and Juvia flinched, but in her next try, she managed to land on her feet even though she wobbled a little. He wouldn't teach her tree walking at this point if she was a normal kid, but fortunately Juvia's water body prevented her from physically injured. He had taught her tree jumping and other standard pre-genin skill, she was still learning though. He taught her this exercise because control was main priority to get this abnormal weather phenomena that kept following her around under control. Rumbling sound of thunder echoed from the distant and Naruto turned his attention to Juvia's expression. Thunder and lightning sometime accompanied her rain, which might be a sign lightning was her secondary element. He was glad if that was the case since because of her water body, Naruto feared what would become of her if she faced enemy with lightning power. But it was only when she was extremely upset and angry. She was frustrated but not upset, so it was not her doing but natural weather. You're doing good Juvia, keep going. He encouraged her. If you get this, you can walk on the wall, ceiling, and you can try watching TV upside down. She perked up at the last one, apparently even in this world all kids were excited at the prospect of watching TV upside down. He didn't get why though, Shisui even went as far as bringing him to cinema to enjoy watching upside down and he didn't get the excitement. She redoubled her effort and Naruto couldn't help but snicker. Ah. She got another foot down and 19 feet to go. He didn't know how mages in this world would fare in practicing shinobi technique, but Juvia was doing pretty well for a kid her age. She was at her 10th tries and had managed to get to 10 feet, it was still a far cry from 30 feet he set for her though. He was glad to see her frustration formed a frown on her eyebrow and a pout on her lips. It was a sign that Juvia was proud of herself because she could complete water walk in a blink of an eye and she was frustrated that she couldn't do the same in tree climbing. This was what he wanted from Juvia, pride in herself and desire to feel good about herself. It was her 65th tries and Naruto thought it was the right time to give her a breather. Juvia, take a rest. He yelled because thunder almost drowned his voice. Juvia jumped towards him, muttering a timid thank you when he handed her a water canteen. When she drank her fill Naruto patted the spot where the tree bark was gouged out. I am sure you know why here it's not your soul sticking on the wood but the other way around. Juvia nodded, it's because you used too much energy. Hi. Naruto smiled at her, however this mistake is something you can learn from, in fact Naruto dropped a kunai, focusing chakra on his feet and the kunai stuck on the sole of his foot. We can use it like this and use the principle of water walk to do this. Naruto kicked, pushing his chakra out, and the kunai flew like a bullet towards a rock and impaled itself with great force. She clapped in awe, even though she had seen how skilled her mentor was he never failed to impress her. Whoa. Naruto could see Juvia was thoroughly impressed by the display, no matter how eager she was Juvia was still a kid and to keep her attention span, he had to resort to these little tricks. It was always work wonder to get kids sitting for hours to study sealing arts. Naruto then prepared the next trick, using water walk principle to push chakra out from his soul so he could propel himself with great speed. We can also make it work like this to accelerate, since Juvia is natural in water walk, this is going to be Han. Splat. Juvia flinched when a particularly loud thundering noise startled them both. The lightning struck pretty close, Naruto thought. Well I guess that's a sign to call it a day now. He mumbled under his breath. They were in the middle of forest, and shinobi or not, he was not going to spend the night outside in the middle of storm with his disciple. Yuvia is not upset. She wailed suddenly, sniffing in frustration. Why the storm is coming. Naruto sighed, in spite of months far away from people mocking her reign, Juvia was still very sensitive when it comes to her mood and the weather. Juvia, it's not your fault, it's natural weather. Don't get worked up over what nature decides to do. Had he looked up that time, Naruto would know the hole that forming on top of them in the sky was not natural. Juvia brightened at that, it's not Juvia's. No, it's not. He assured her. Juvia want to continue training, she mumbled and ran back to her marked tree. Naruto sighed, well, if you insist. He had seen a clearing nearby and the moment it started raining, he would unseal their house there. He was sick of camping, so he built a small log house and carried it around inside a storage scroll. Once it start raining, you have to stop, okay? Juvia cheered at that, hi. Shushu. Naruto watched Juvia stumbling for a while as she ran up the tree. She also went splat on the ground a couple of times, much to his chagrin. Splat. Shushu. Juvia squeaked, looking up to see if the lightning was close. She blinked when she saw something unfamiliar on the gray cloud that had been constant presence in her life. As far as she remembered, she had never seen a black hole on it. Heh. With her focus disrupted, she slipped and landed unceremoniously to the ground as a puddle of water. Naruto facepalmed, Juvia, land on your feet. He reminded her, completely oblivious of the hole opening above them. I guess we can continue at home, you can try it on our wall. He trailed off before he amended, on second thought it would be bad if the wall is wearing down because of this exercise. He trailed off. Shushu, there's a hole in the sky. Juvia squeaked as she finished materializing, her head solid. Naruto paused in his lecture, there's what in the sky? He inquired and looked up. Watch out. Someone yelled. Crash. The first thing he saw, however, was not a hole in the sky as Juvia said, but a blue blur crashing down to his cranium. He had high pain tolerance, it was painful enough to make him seeing starts for a while. Ouch, that's hurt. Shushu. Naruto rubbed his throbbing cranium and looked to the side to see what hit his head. Much to his shock, he saw a blue-haired boy with red tribal tattoo on the right side of his face. The boy was unconscious, and that was enough to jog Naruto out of his shock and approached the boy to check on his condition. He didn't give the boy a brain damage, did he? You have like the hardest head in elemental continent. Even in another world he still heard Shisui teasing him, Wonderful. Naruto checked the boy's vital, a light concussion perhaps, which mean the boy would be cranky when he wake up. Then he noticed the boy's temple was bleeding, nothing to worry about as it was just superficial wound. He gently lifted the boy off the ground to his arms and instinctively the boy snuggled closer to him. The weather was pretty cold now in autumn and the clothes he was wearing was pretty thin. That was odd, the boy was wearing black shirt with short sleeve and long gray pants, not warm enough clothes for kid to wear in autumn. That was odd, although falling from the sky was weirder. Juvia stared in awe at the boy on his arms. Shisu, is it normal to see a boy falling from the sky? Juvia thought only waterfall from the sky. Naruto looked at the unconscious boy on his arms and strange stick that strapped on his back. Well, in my homeland, raining men and blood is pretty common. Juvia blinked at that, but I am sure in Earthland, it's unusual, but he didn't fall from the sky, but from a hole in the sky. Naruto corrected. Juvia hummed at that, but he is really lucky that you caught him when he fell. Shushu. Naruto rubbed his throbbing cranium, he was so focused in Juvia's training that he didn't watch out that someone fell on his head. I am not sure it count as catching him if I did it with my head, he has a pretty hard head. 2 hours later. Joel woke up by delicious smell and pleasant warmth. He was confused when he felt he was lying on something fluffy, not as soft as his royal bed, but soft. Could it be he was caught sneaking to use an Ema machine and brought back to his room, or perhaps his father threw him to the dungeon? His head was throbbing, and even though he hadn't opened his eyes, his hand instinctively reached out to touch his head, but someone grabbed his hand. Don't touch your wound like that. A stern voice warned him. He slowly opened his eyes, but his sight was blurry, he could feel the hand that was holding his was large and calloused. It almost like Lily's minus the furriness. NGH, he groaned in response, tears started to pool on his eyes. It's hurt, he didn't want to, but his breath became hitched and he started to cry. He was upset, very much so. He couldn't understand why he felt so upset and recalled he felt the same when Lily rescued him back then. Doctor said it was concussion and normal for a child like him to be abnormally upset and cried a lot. Oh, the seal effect is wearing down, I see. The voice turned gentle and caring, then he felt something warm touching his head and the pain slowly disappeared. There, all better. He was still crying, but slowly he could bring his emotion back to control. Yes, thank you. A soft towel dabbed his eyes gently, wiping the tears so he could start to see more clearly. His eyes widened when he saw a boy who was probably just a few years older than him. His hair was the brightest yellow he had ever seen, almost like the sun, and cerulean blue eyes that mirrored the sky. He was wearing a black turtleneck shirt, an orange vest, and dark blue pants. Jello didn't expect a young teenager tending his wound, he sounded so mature and something about him felt ancient. "Who are you?" His savior seemed to be amused by his question. "Shouldn't you introduce yourself first?" He tensed, flushing a deep red when he realized how rude he was. "My apologies, my name is Jello." "No last name?" he inquired, and Jello tensed. After a few moments the older boy shrugged and Jello was relieved that I was not interested to pry further. "Naruto." "Eh?" "Naruto Uzumaki, that's my name," the blonde boy said in amused voice. "It seems you really have a concussion considering your lack of focus, no wonder since your head collided with mine pretty hard." It took Jello a few seconds to process what Naruto just said. "I what?" "Never mind," he shrugged and looked to the side. That was when Jello noticed in this small log house they were not the only occupant, there was another child. She was sitting on a chair near the kitchen. She was a little younger than Jello with blue hair in different shade than his tight-in ponytail and eyes in darker shade. She was wearing a simple dark blue one-piece with furred collar. She looked at him curiously before she joined the older boy near his bed. "My name is Juvia, nice to meet you," she said timidly before she hid herself behind Naruto. They looked nothing alike, so she couldn't be Naruto's little sister, perhaps there was someone else who was older in this house. "Nice to meet you too, I am Jello." He let his eyes wander around the house and noticed it was pretty small with all rooms adjoined together, 2 beds in the corner, a small kitchen, a shelves full of books and scrolls, a couch and a dining table. Sound of bubbling startled him a little and he realized on the stove something was cooked. From the sweet scent, it was corn soup. GROWL. Jello flushed a deep red when he realized the rumbling sound was coming from his stomach and Naruto and Juvia's smile didn't help. His embarrassing growling stomach seemed to make Juvia less shy as she didn't hide behind Naruto anymore and go as far as fetching a bowl of corn soup for him. There was a small bedside table and Juvia put the bowl and a glass of water there. "Don't move around for now." Naruto warned him, "You are still not well enough to move too much." Jello nodded and once again he thought Naruto behaved so adult-like it was almost weird. Juvia also called Naruto as Shushu, which meant Naruto was her mentor. He didn't ask why, but he couldn't help but feel curious. Naruto noticed Jello was not normal, as if falling from a hole in the sky wasn't already abnormal even by his standard. Another thing he noticed was how Jello was looking at the warm bowl of soup with childish wonder. "Warm," the blue-haired boy murmured as his hands touched the wooden bowl. "It's hot," he pointed out when Jello almost ate a spoonful of soup without blowing it first. "You will burn your tongue." Jello nervously blew his soup, looking very awkward when doing it. It was not hard for Naruto to put 2 and 2 together and he thought, "Oh shit, not this complicated crap again." 1 week later. Jello was recovering well and Naruto knew the boy was anxious that neither he nor Juvia ever asked where he came from. Naruto told Juvia to not ask Jello a thing and Juvia didn't question him. If Shushu said so, that was enough reason for Juvia. Naruto thought he should confront Jello once the boy recovered and he was well enough today. He even joined Juvia in her morning stretch. So Naruto sent Juvia away to practice in nearby lake under supervision of a Kage Bunshin and called Jello to come with him inside the house. Jello was visibly nervous and Naruto was sure the boy had a number of scenarios running through his mind. Too bad Naruto had no intention to listen to a make-up story and went for the kill. He cleared his throat once they sat comfortably on the 2 separate bed, face to face with each other. "Jello, it's been a week since you joined us." Jello tensed, "So I want to know, what do you want to do next?" The younger boy fidgeted, he had dreaded Naruto to ask that question. He would be lying if he say he didn't want to stay with him. He had been so determined to come to Earthland and he knew he would travel alone, but that resolve was crumbling as he spent time with Naruto and Juvia. He was used to be so lonely in his palace, but he had never been completely alone and in an unfamiliar world. The sigh from Naruto snapped him out of his thought. "Jello, I am not telling you to leave, I just want to know if you want to stay with us. As you know, Juvia and I are nomads so we won't stay in the same place for long, are you fine with that?" He nodded, "I am fine," was Naruto, implying he could stay with them if he want to. Naruto took that as a sign Jello wanted to stay, so he pushed on. "Jello, there's a couple of issues I would like to address with you if you want to stay with us," he informed Jello and the boy tensed again. "How royalty-like you fell from a hole in the sky." Jello expected the falling from the sky part, but he didn't expect the royalty part, how? Had Jello been older, Naruto would point out that he shouldn't ask back and confirm Naruto's suspicion in the same time, a royal family member shouldn't be this easy to interrogate. Then again he was a kid, so Naruto let it slide. "Jello, a normal 8-year-old kid won't use my apologies like you do, your reaction when I point out you're being rude is also telling that you're raised in strict environment," he pointed out in lofty tone. But the biggest tell is your reaction to warm meals. He blinked at that, the first two he understand but the last one. You act as if it's unusual to serve warm meal. Naruto explained with a sigh, this would only happen to royal family member who on daily basis have their meal poison tested, so by the time their food reached their table it's already cold. Jello stared at Naruto in shock, he could tell Jello was a royalty because he acted odd when eating warm food. Naruto was right though, that in Adola's his meal was always tested for poison before served, so he never had warm meal in his table, and it was a novel experience when he had it for the first time. Jello, you haven't answered my question. Naruto reminded him, and even though Naruto didn't voice it, Naruto had answered his question and wanted him to return the favor. If there was one thing he learned first about the enigma named Naruto, the older boy was a very attentive person. All things considered, it was not odd at all. Naruto figured him out already. I am a prince, that's true, he admitted hesitantly. That was easy to admit, but the other world part or why he came to Earthland. Naruto sighed wearily when he saw the boy hesitated. Jello, I am asking not because I want to send you back to your family or anything, but look at this situation, I have a prince in my care, I don't know where he come from or why he is here. I assure you Naruto-san, no one is going to after me here, so you don't have to worry. Naruto cut him off sharply, how could you be so sure of that, Jello? The prince tensed, Naruto had been stern with him and Juvia, but never scathing like this. Listen, I can't take your word about no one is going to after you without you explaining why, and even so, from what I see you run away from your kingdom on your own will. Looking at Jello's behavior, it was clear he was at ease to be away from his homeland, which meant the boy had ran away from home and not expecting anyone to go after him. It was not like he was a physic to make this wild guess, it was just he knew noble, and one of his closest friend was a prince who will do anything to get away from his stuffy palace, even for the stupidest reason like picking Tora the demon cat up from Konoha. So yeah, he had loads of experience with runaway prince. However, unlike his friend, Jello was 9 years old boy and Naruto had no idea where this boy came from and why he ran away. Jello keeping his lips shut tightly was not helping. Look, since you don't want to talk I will make my guess, or rather listing his old friend's reason to run away from his palace, you have a fight with your father. Jello's closed lips slowly hung open, the boy was too easy to read. I guessed that one right. Jello covered his mouth with his hands, is it because you don't like how your father run the country? Jello averted his eyes, Jello, you're not doing a very good job in hiding your expression, he pointed out coolly. Jello put his hands back to his side, his face set in stubborn expression. He was clearly unhappy Naruto made a fool of him. HMPH. Then he slowly turned his face back to Naruto. How? Well Jello, let's say I happen to have an old friend with similar problem with you. Jello's eyes widened, yes, I am a friend of a prince, and when I say he likes to run away he do it legally, so he won't be dragged back to his palace, and he is 23 and not 9 years old. Jello shrank on his seat, I doubt it very much that you come here with permission. Doesn't matter. Jello gritted out. My father disowned me, there's no official banishment or anything, but father don't care where I am, or if I am alive or not. So. Naruto run his fingers through his golden locks. Jello, you are a royalty, please don't assume just because your father don't care about you everything is just fine. The prince was surprised Naruto suddenly opened the drawer of the bedside table and pulled out a board game, unlike chess the board was plain wood and not painted, and the pieces were wedge-shaped. I could have stayed quiet and let you be if I want to. Naruto informed him sternly as arranging the wedge-shaped pieces on the board. However, you still care about your country, don't you? I do. Jello exclaimed, for a moment his eyes were drawn to structure made of shogi pieces Naruto built. It looked like an upside-down triangle, and the whole thing was supported by one piece with ukanji on it. How Naruto made the structure stand, he didn't know, but Naruto had a very excellent sense of balance. Oh? Jello growled, but I don't want to stay there any longer, I hate his policy. He don't care of anything but magic power. He sacrificed people to get what he wants. He smelled trouble from this, that the reason Jello left was more complicated than early teenage rebellion. Nothing new, there's no kingdom in this world that built only with stone without some blood mixed into heart in the foundation. What my father has done is wrong. Jello was furious. And Naruto drawled, how's running away from your kingdom solve this wrongdoing? Naruto taunted, his forefinger tapped the king piece on his board and said. In monarchy almost everything revolves with their royalty, and picking a fight with your father when you are a kid with no real authority is not helping your country. If anything, it will end like this. Naruto flicked his finger at the king pieces and the structure crumbled. Your people can be at peace all they want, your army could share wine every night, but once royal family members are at odds with each other, that's it, everyone will have to take sides. Civil war, the worst thing that can happen to a kingdom. I am not going to make anyone take side. Naruto rolled his eyes inwardly, wondering how this conversation escalated to hell. He expected the runaway prince case, but he didn't expect the prince was confused little boy who ran away without thinking the consequences. You're here, aren't you? If you don't like how your father run your country and you left, I can't believe you're just going to stay away and do nothing, so pray tell me how you're going to do something that oppose your father, but not incite a civil war in the same time. Gel's patience was thinning and the next thing he knew he spilled everything about Idola's, Anima and his father to Naruto. How his kingdom was in crisis for magical energy while all of their technology was so heavily relied on it, and how they solved the said problem with exploiting Earthland's magical energy. He wanted to help and stop this madness, so he ran away to Earthland and stopped Anima project. When he realized he had told Naruto everything, Gel was horrified. He might be young, but he was a royalty and not that naive to not realize Naruto had taunted and manipulated him to spill his secret. He had been dancing on Naruto's palm all along. It's all good you want to help Earthland, Gel. However, you're but one person and a child, you can help people, but in the end you solve nothing. Naruto pointed out in solemn tone. Idolas will keep making Anima, your father will keep sacrificing Earthland for power and to keep his people happy, and your people is still reliant on magical energy their world can't provide. Something inside him snapped and he felt the same anger and frustration he felt when he decided to leave Idolas. Naruto was still looking at him with unwavering eyes, Gel was not hiding that he was angry at Naruto, and the older boy was still as cool as cucumber after the whole ordeal. He thought Naruto was an admirable person, it seemed he judged the blonde wrong. Naruto was manipulative and arrogant person, just like his father. I am leaving. He announced, not as calm as he liked as he was trembling with fury. Naruto's blue eyes didn't leave his, and Gel felt Naruto was judging whether he was serious or just throwing a tantrum like a spoiled child. So Gel walked away, snatching his backpack and staff from nearby shelf. He was about to open the door when he heard Naruto's sigh and turned to look at the blonde. Naruto sighed again, resting his forehead against his palm, and mouthed one word that sent his temper sky high. Brat. Naruto mouthed out exasperatedly. Gel walked out of the house, fuming in anger and shame. Few hours later. Gel was regretting his decision to leave already, because after a few hours of walk he realized while Naruto had been a manipulative bastard, the older boy didn't do it with ill intention. Naruto was right that what he was trying to do was just delaying his father's plan a little, it was like trying to extinguish forest on fire with a bucket of water. Naruto was also right that in the end he solved nothing. Naruto had been hard on him, but Gel was also not helping with losing control of his temper like that. Naruto was still an ass, but he was an ass who had told him nothing but truth. I am really a brat. He muttered exasperatedly, crouching as holding his head. Naruto seemed to have lots of experience in politic if his speech and confidence when talking with Gel were anything to go by. It was no wonder if he saw Gel and his impulsive decision to run away to Earthland to close Anima as a brat. When he was a prince in Idolas, he could look for a chance to undermine his father, but as an disowned prince, he had no way to do anything that could be meaningful impact to Anima project. He also couldn't travel around Earthland forever to close Anima, and his world was still reliant on magical energy. Should I apologize to Naruto-san? Would Naruto forgive him? Gel was sure someone like Naruto would brush off one childish tantrum as nothing, but he couldn't bear the thought of imposing on Naruto again after what happened just now. But he didn't want to be alone, and he was already attached to Naruto and Juvia. He wanted to go back but he couldn't and shouldn't. Gel stopped walking, leaning back against a tree. He was so wrapped by his thought that he didn't notice a pair of feline eyes watching him from above. Gel heaved a sigh and looked up right when a tiger was jumping off of the tree to lunge at him. Gel froze in fear as the tiger closed in and there's no way he could reach out for his staff in time. However, a strong gush of wind slammed the tiger hard, the beast was blown away and rolled on the ground 15 feet away from Gel. The tiger snarled and Gel stepped back until he felt his back pressed against something warm. The next thing he knew Naruto had stepped forward, standing right in front of him. Gel didn't know what made him grab Naruto's hand or why he was trembling. He was not scared of the tiger, he could put it to sleep if he wanted. However, all he did was standing behind Naruto and held his hand as if his dear life depended on it. Had Gel looked up to Naruto's face he would see the older boy's face was perfectly blank and his blue eyes narrowed at the beast. Gel watched the tiger's ferocious eyes change to one with fear, it stepped back before it turned around and ran like the devil itself was chasing it. Gel's mind was puzzling over the strange behavior but stopped abruptly when Naruto's free hand patted his head. Then the older boy crouched down so he was face to face with Gel. In face of danger, don't freeze, don't stare at it, but move and observe. Naruto said in lecturing tone Gel heard he used when training Juvia. The blue-haired boy just nodded numbly. So? Naruto started and Gel began to sweat nervously of what the blonde was going to say next. His eyes widened when Naruto without warning poked him in forehead, making him stumble backward a little. Have you calmed down enough? Jello blinked in confusion, and Naruto elaborated. I am asking whether you're not angry anymore at me so we can go home. Another poke on his forehead, and Jello's brain started to reboot. It's almost lunchtime, and Juvia will get worried if we don't go back soon. Jello's mind almost went haywire at the implication, I can stay. Naruto raised an eyebrow at Jello, and then he gave him another forehead poking. The gesture confused Jello, but he didn't protest. If you want to, and even if you want to leave, I will insist to accompany you to nearest village first. Jello shook his head frantically, no. I want to stay with you and Juvia. Jello froze and flushed brilliant red at his outburst. He expected Naruto to grin or teased him for his outburst, but he didn't expect a hug and the words Naruto uttered next. I am glad to hear that, really glad, Naruto said as he slowly let go of Jello. I am sorry I have been hard on you, Jello. It's fine. Jello murmured. I need it. He added somberly. I have been a brat and a stupid one at that. You're right, I have been so impulsive in my decision. I am sorry I snapped at you when all you did is pointing out truths I refuse to acknowledge. Naruto sighed in relief, it seemed Jello was not angry anymore. Well, I still think I have to apologize, I should have worded it well in kinder way. You're a prince and a royalty, but first of all you're a child. Jello didn't say anything in response, so Naruto continued. Then again, with my militant background, I have a hard time to treat kids like kids when all my life I treat them as comrades and student. He murmured softly. Naruto-san. Naruto shrugged. Well, Jello, since I pretty much goaded you to spill your guts, it's far if I spill mine too, Naruto said, laughing softly. I am not from this world either. Jello's eyes widened in shock, what? He nodded, I won't elaborate how I got here, as it's just going to give you a headache, but in my original world I was a child soldier, I was trained to be a killer since I was 5 years old. Jello's lip clamped shut as he listened, his mind had difficulty to process that the blonde in front of him was a killer. I am a little special among my peers, and it gave me a lot of trouble and a little blessing, and my life was not exactly peachy. He knew Naruto glossed over his life story, but he didn't think he had right to demand more, and Naruto must have an incredibly good reason to hold back. When I see you I see myself, a kid with heavy burden in his shoulders, and it is as if you will be crushed by the said burden, because you want to shoulder it alone, Naruto murmured, looking at him in the eye. Don't. Eh? He blinked owlishly. Don't. Do. It. Alone. Naruto intoned each word with grim expression on his face. I was angry. Jello tensed, frightened to hear Naruto honestly admitted that the blonde had been angry at him. That you came to this world alone, you shouldn't have. Naruto murmured softly. Those who think they can do anything alone is bound to fail, so don't shoulder your burden alone, just don't, it will break you apart, and even though you are trying to help people, in the end you can't even help yourself and end up regretting a lot of things, so many regrets he had to learn to accept and live with. He spoke from his personal experience, Jello thought. I won't, he murmured, not anymore, he said in the sincerest voice he could muster. Please, please, please believe me. He chanted mentally as looking at Naruto in the eye. Naruto smiled at that, and for the first time Jello felt Naruto's expression was unguarded and no longer controlled, a genuine smile, and it was because he was relieved Jello was not going to shoulder his burden alone. I am glad to hear that. Without warning, Naruto poked his forehead again and Jello yelped in surprise. Jello was going to ask what's with the forehead poking, but quieted down when he saw Naruto had stood up with a hand outstretched for him. Let's go home, Jello, and welcome to my family. Home, family, I like how those words sounds, he thought as he followed Naruto back to where Juvia was waiting. He believed he had found his place in Earthland and he was no longer alone. The reason Ito Jello Mystigan's chapter is longer is because the guy have bigger issue than Juvia. With Juvia the issue is solved with Naruto adopting her and train her to build self-confidence. With our prince, however, long list of issue, I have a big headache over where to start. Only Earthland Jello will be able to top him, lol, and it's still him. To be honest, I find conclusion of Idola's arc, while not bad, is lacking somehow. I also write my thought on Jello wandering around the world to close Anima in this chapter, because well, he is a 12 years old kid traveling around the world to put a damper on his father's grand plan. If Idola's arc, Magnolia sucked to Anima, never happen, the guy will continue his routine. From what I see, he has no intention, or rather no solution, to end the whole ordeal. His plan to reverse Anima is extreme and undoubtedly something last minute. He even almost appoint Lily to be the king when Exceed would be expelled out of Idola's too. So all his plans are reckless and botched, so please excuse my Naruto knocking some sense to his head. I decide to plan 7 chapters pre-canon before going for time skip just to fit 7th in GFT, so fond of LOL, so 3 more to go. Next in Foxtales to Fairy Tail. Chapter 3. Brushing with Darkness. I believe it's a common courtesy to introduce yourself first. Naruto answered in clipped tone. My apologies then, the older man said hastily. My name is Hades. Okay, the way this man behaved was really unnerving, he didn't expect this stranger to apologize just for that. Wait. Zareth. Wait. Hades called out frantically. Naruto's eyes widened in shock beneath his mask, what did you just call me? Hades was startled for a moment by his question before the mage started to rub his long beard as if he understood Naruto's question. You're still asleep, I see, but it's fine, I am still looking for keys for your resurrection, Zareth, and I swear you will be back to power. What? This man seriously thought he was Zareth. I am not Zareth, in case you live under a rock you should know he is dead for 400 years. But you're him. I'm not. He was so glad he left Jelil and Juvia somewhere else with his clones, he seriously didn't want this madman anywhere near his disciples. Nah, the newest chapter is awesome, finally some redemption for Aquarius. I don't hate her, but I wonder the wisdom of leaving your owner too many times that could cause her death. Third tale, brushing with darkness. Jelil fit into their little group as if he had been with them forever. The Prince of Adolis quickly became an older brother figure to Juvia, and he had been pretty protective of the younger girl, especially after he found out why throughout his stay with them, the weather was eternally cloudy without a speck of sunlight. Jelil assured Juvia he didn't mind the lack of sunlight, if anything it was good that he didn't have to be worried of getting sunstroke and burn. Jelil was just a shade less paler than Juvia, so Naruto was sure the boy would be as red as tomato under the sun. Naruto chalked it up as another sign that Jelil was a type of prince with sheltered life, and it shows. Fortunately for a prince with a sheltered life, Jelil was pretty determined to learn and not afraid to get dirty. There's not much trouble to teach Jelil magic, he was still a little awkward to call it that, and their discovery that Jelil was capable to learn to use normal chakra was gold. He had suspected that Adola's human actually had closer physical structure to shinobi of his world, and he was proven right. Jelil was over the moon by their discovery, although he was disappointed that normal chakra couldn't be used to solve his world's energy crisis. He explained that chakra was the molding of the physical energy present in every cell of the body and the spiritual energy gained from the mind, while what mages of Earthland used was natural chakra, Eterno, which was normal chakra with nature energy mixed on it. Normal chakra had more limitation and the recovery rate was much slower. It was good for combat, but as source of energy for daily need was impossible. It didn't dampen Jelil's spirit to learn more though. Just like Juvia, his problem in teaching Jelil was not physical, but more in mental kind of trouble. When he found out about it, Naruto was glad Jelil was born in Adola's and not shinobi world, because for all talent he had, Jelil had a very bad sense of subtlety and stealth. Naruto didn't realize these problems at first, not until they made their stop in nearest village. On the first day Naruto wanted to see how his pupils socializing with civilians, so he sent them both to separate shopping trip. Juvia was incredibly shy, but she was endearing to them so they gave her discounts. Jelil's shopping trip was interesting. People had shots Jelil weird look because of his polite speech pattern that sometimes veering to archaic, and Naruto had to sit the boy down and teach him how to speak casually. The next day Naruto gave Juvia and Jelil a mini test of stealth. The test was simple, they had to sneak inside their rented room without being noticed by other guests. He never taught them stealth, so he let them to be creative about it. Juvia predictably sneaked inside from water pipe, not too creative but a good try for a beginner. Naruto panicked a little when the water girl got lost for a while inside the water pipe, but she made it okay in the end. Unexpectedly Jelil failed the test spectacularly. Apparently Jelil's understanding of coming and going unseen was with putting people to sleep with his magic. Naruto ranted for a good 5 minutes to explain why that was not a good idea, because people still noticed they suddenly fell asleep en masse for no good reason, and it was not stealthy to walk inside through the front door. Naruto didn't know what he expected after the 2 first tests, but he did it anyway. On the 3rd day he gave them money to buy disguise supplies and told them to walk around the market in 2 hours before he went out and try to find them. Juvia's disguise was pretty amateurish and Naruto was horrified to see Juvia went as far as cutting her hair haphazardly and dressed like a boy. He complimented Juvia for a good first try and sent her to nearest saloon to fix her hair. When he found Jelil in disguise, Naruto didn't know if he had to laugh or horrified. Jelil had chosen to wear so many layers of clothing that only his eyes were visible. He expected something amateur, not monstrous, and definitely not an Aburam impersonation. Jelil needed this skill badly because of the counterpart thing. Naruto was not looking forward to explain why there were 2 Jelil if they were unfortunate enough to see Earthland Jelil, and knowing his luck Naruto was sure they would. They already talked about new name and looks even, but looking at this Jelil had a long way to go. Well, his disguise did hide most of him so it would work for the counterpart problem, but he's certainly not going to let this boy walking in that pile of clothes throughout his stay in Earthland. So how about this, Shushu? Jelil asked nervously. Naruto face-palmed and Jelil knew that he had failed spectacularly for the 3rd time. It's good if you want to blend in with the Aburams. Naruto mumbled under his breath. Gel Naruto heaved a sigh. I think the biggest problem here is not social skill, not stealth, and not disguise skill, either it's even more basic. Gel blinked owlishly. Eh? Gel Naruto began exasperatedly, I need to teach you common sense. Then after a second of consideration, he amended. Civilians' common sense, yeah. Huh? Naruto looked at watch and realized it was almost dinner time. Well, it can wait, so drop all that clothing, let's fetch Juvia in that beauty salon, and then we can go to have dinner. Jello nodded, his cheek flushed beet red as they went to small alley so he could discard his heavy clothing. Salon. Juvia cut her hair with kunai and show up as a boy. Naruto explained, so I drop her there to fix her hair. When Jello idly fingered his hair, Naruto gave him a warning glare. Don't even think about it. The blue-haired boy flinched. On second thought, Naruto drawled, we can consider the option of dyeing your hair and changing hairstyle, but let's don't think about it now. Naruto and Jello were relieved when they picked Juvia up from the beauty salon. The hairstylist had done a good job fixing Juvia's impulsive decision to cut her hair to complete her boy disguise. Her hair now was cut in stylish short hair with slightly longer bangs framing her face. Juvia was nervous whether she looked good in her new hair. Naruto and Jello picked this and quickly compliment her new looks. Inwardly, Naruto was a little sad because he liked styling Juvia's hair. Male in his family always had a thing for hair for some unexplainable reason. Then again, Juvia had all intention to grow it out again. Naruto mentally noted to buy some hair clips and headband before they left the village for Juvia. The girl was happy her family liked her new hair and excitedly pointed at a small and cozy-looking restaurant not far from the beauty salon. Naruto and Jello had to admit the pictures of food displayed outside were mouthwatering. They chose to sit in far corner seats. Juvia and Jello decided the only complaint they had about the restaurant was the waitress's uniform was too tight and short. Last time they looked up from the menu, they were sure the first two buttons of her uniform were properly buttoned, not open, and showed generous amount of cleavage. Jello wondered if this girl realized she was trying to flirt with a 13-year-old boy. Then again, their master looked like he was at least 5 years older than his real physical age because of his height and mannerism. It also saved them a lot of trouble in traveling because people easily believed their master was 17 and traveling with 2 kids as his disciples. Juvia was annoyed the waitress was disturbing their master, while Jello didn't know where to look and embarrassed to see the young lady was so forward. So what would you like to eat tonight, kind sir? She purred, leaning down a little so if Naruto looked away from the menu, he would get an eyeful of her cleavage. Naruto chose to not even give a glance at tempting side on his right, pork chop set, seafood salad and iced tea. He listed on. She wrote down his order and waited for him to close the menu and put it down. There was a pregnant silence until Naruto handed the menu back to her and said, we will order again later if we want more. He told her coolly, glancing at her direction for the first time, and quickly turned his attention to his disciple again to start a conversation. The waitress was disappointed and walked away from their table with a huff. Jello and Juvia heaved a sigh of relief while their master chuckled at their discomfort. Get used to it, in few years it will be you get hit on by girls. He said, giving Jello a pointed look, the same for you, Juvia. The prince flushed a deep red, sputtering indignantly. I don't want that. Juvia frowned deeply, imagining boys who liked bullying her in school trying to get her attention. Same. Naruto shrugged, you don't want it all you like. Their conversation was cut short when the waitress was back with their drinks and she had a friend tagging along carrying their appetizer. Juvia glowered when she noticed both of them were indecent and shoving each other to get a better look on their master. Jello couldn't take it anymore and moved beside Juvia because he'd rather face a legion with a toothpick than seeing these girls flashing their mentor. Naruto raised an eyebrow when he saw how much discomfort the two waitresses caused to his disciples while it was him who's supposed to feel uncomfortable. It seemed these two won't leave until he ogled at them at least a little. My shift will finish at 9. The blonde one said as she scooted closer, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. So does mine. The other said, giving Naruto a coy smirk. Shiaisu. Naruto sighed inwardly as he could hear them crying in his mind to send these two away. So Naruto slowly turned his face to their direction, cheek rested against the back of his hand as he openly checking them out from head to toe. In spite of their bold approach, both of them fidgeted under his gaze. He gave them a mischievous smile, cerulean eyes locked to theirs. See you later then. They squealed and then quickly walking away to staff room, chattering 1 mile per minute and arguing which of them Naruto meant to see later. The blonde heaved a sigh of relief and chugged down a mouthful of his tea greedily. Then he noticed Jello and Juvia were staring at him wide-eyedly, as if he had grown second head. It was Jello who found his voice first, shushu you flirt back. He shrugged, I get them off of my back, didn't I? Beside he looked at Juvia, who no doubt misunderstood that he was giving in to their demand. I never specify when I will see them later, I just dismiss them and their imagination work on the rest for me. Jelil and Juvia still gave him a shocked look. Naruto gave Jelil a stern look. Juvia could sputter about him flirting with girl all she wanted, but Jelil had no excuse. And Jelil dealing with unwanted attention of court ladies should be part of your routine. He had agreed to teach Jelil politic, and the last thing he wanted was Jelil shying away from unwanted attention. Jelil groaned at that, yes Shishu. Back in Adola's his lesson in politics didn't involve too much details in diplomacy like his current one did. To Naruto lesson in economy, management and other field to run the country was important, but diplomacy was almost everything because apparently bullshitting your way through connections couldn't be learned overnight. Or so Naruto said. Jelil in spite of learning seals later than Juvia was more advanced than the water girl. It was not like Juvia was less intelligent or talented, but because Jelil's background was giving him an advantage. Juvia had to learn mathematics, calligraphy and basic theory. On the other hand, as a prince learning foreign language was a must, and Jelil had learned kanji and other oriental alphabets, while Juvia had not. Jelil had mathematics down the pat, a bit of brushing up in his calligraphy, and a couple of lessons in basic theory. Juvia was still struggling on math and calligraphy. Motivation also played part because Jelil really wanted to find substitute for magical energy in his world through seals. Naruto had demonstrated that with a little amount of chakra and the right mechanism, a seal could produce energy with using kinetic energy nature produced. Juvia was not disheartened Jelil was ahead of her, if anything it spurred the water girl to do better. Naruto was glad Jelil was more than happy to assist Juvia to learn kanji and calligraphy, and the sight of his two disciples on nearby desk, huddling around a scroll was an adorable one. He was sprawling on their king-size bed, watching them. They could get 3 singles, but Juvia liked cuddling, and he won't deny her that until she was too old for family cuddling. Juvia's wobbly hands struggled to get kanji for Ogrov Cloud, right. Jelil was supervising her closely, yes, just give it one even stroke there. He pointed to the paper, get this part done first, that stroke is after this one the order of stroke is really important. Juvia nodded, and her brush did as instructed by Jelil. One more stroke after she memorized the order of stroke, she had to repeat writing this character hundreds and even thousands of times with precision and swiftness, like hundreds other she had learned throughout her training with their master. Yep, that's. Boom. Fire. Hiya. ARRRFG. Help. Juvia and Jelil jumped from their seats, the ink stone fell from the desk and broke to pieces. Naruto was on his feet with a kunai ready in hand. His eyes widened when Jelil moved to the window, curious of what happened outside. He grabbed the blue-haired boy by his collar away from the window. Don't approach the window so recklessly. He hissed as the boy struggled in his hold and his other hand pulled Juvia flush against his body. Listen, the village is under attack. It could be just a big fire at first, but by now shouts and screams from outside that filled his ears were from all over the village. He only had heard this kind commotion in war and big raid. He closed his eyes briefly and strengthened all his senses to scan the whole villages. There were hundreds of chakra with evil tint and a number of them had Ethereum mixed on them. They had mages with them, or rather this raid was led by mages. His senses picked something else, the chakra pattern all over the village became strange. They were killing peoples wasn't weird, but weaker energy that belonged to children were untouched. This was bad news, a very bad news. Naruto gritted his teeth in anger. They're rounding children up. They were slave traders. Shishu Juvia trembled as he slowly let both of them go. What should we do? Stay calm. Naruto said sternly, no matter what, stay calm, don't panic, and remember what I taught you. He didn't want them to fight yet, but if the situation calls for it, he couldn't baby them forever. Jelil. He called his older disciple. We will have to leave this room eventually. I want you and Juvia to protect each other if I am occupied and can't protect you. They nodded stiffly. You have your sleep magic, and Juvia is invulnerable against most physical attack, you can do it. Hi. Second Naruto handed them 2 familiar tri-pronged kunais, this in case we're separated, throw this to call me. Jelil nodded as he nervously put the custom-made kunai to his weapon pouch, while Juvia did the same to hers. They also quickly donned their hooded cloak and pulled the hood to cover their head. Naruto gave them face mask as well, because there were buildings on fire outside and he didn't want to risk it. He also wore the same to cover most of his body. Had he been in his homeland he would mind very much looking like Kakashi, but now he could be careless about it. Naruto took a deep breath for his last order, and last he drawled, leaning down, so his eyes were on the same level as theirs. They knew whenever their master was looking at them with that look, he was going to give them one absolute command they had to obey no matter what. I will most likely shed blood tonight, whether it's theirs or even mine. I want you to not let fear rule you, stay strong, and move forward without hesitation. The last one, hesitation is one thing you're not allowed to have tonight, understood? Yes Shishu. They chorused. Naruto gave them a gentle smile, it was not much, but he wanted to assure them that everything was going to be alright. Now, prepare to move. Suddenly a small puff of smoke appeared beside him, a clone quickly sprung forward with katana drawn, he impaled the door, and when he drew it out there was blood on the blade. Naruto called another clone to guard their back as he and his disciples ran out of the room, ignoring the corpse that laid beside the door. Naruto cursed under his breath, he was really unhappy that he had to expose his disciples to scene of carnage tonight. Once they were outside, Naruto had all intention to get the fuck away from there with his disciples, but fate didn't let him. He didn't like that the first thing they saw just had to be one of the masked men dragging a crying girl from an old woman's corpse. He also didn't like Jelil had sprung to action and using his staff to whack the masked man on the head, apparently his pacifist disciple deemed the jerk deserve a good bonking on the head instead of a nice deep sleep. Naruto was even unhappier when the man started to retaliate and he had to throw a kunai right between his eyes before he could touch Jelil. Naruto cursed his shinobi reflex that reached kunai first because while the kill was swift and efficient, it was bloody and some of it splattered on Jelil's clothes. The boy struggled to keep his composure as Naruto approached him and snapped him out of his stupor. Jelil. The prince swallowed heavily, I am fine Shishu, I am fine. Naruto heaved a sigh of relief, he was trying hard and not panicking. Good. He almost forgot about the poor girl if not for Juvia came and comforted the crying girl. There, don't cry. Juvia cooed to the green-haired girl. She was younger than Juvia, perhaps around 4 years old, and she had eyes and hair as green as jade. Biwaya. Naruto was about to tell Juvia to drop it, just drag the girl with them, because they had no time to stop her from crying. Juvia however manipulated the crying girl's tears, forming bubbles of water in the air, and she stopped crying. At least they didn't have to carry a crying girl with them. One of the girl picked both girls to his arms, and they started running. The girl fortunately didn't cry and clung to the clone and Juvia's cloak. However, they were faced with even more resistance as they trying to reach the border. Naruto knew this tactic very well, in the first place these slave traders had surrounded the village before they attacked, making escape almost impossible for their victims. Naruto would try ninja route via rooftop, but they also had familiars that had bat-looking wings patrolling the sky. Ground was a better option for now. Naruto's sensor flared once again, and he almost ran his katana through the next man he saw approaching them. If not because the man blocked his katana with his armored arm and he realized the man was wearing white armor and not cloaked like their enemies. Who are you? The man asked. Naruto could see pretty well in the dark alley, while the man could not. So Naruto could discern the armored man was pretty muscular and of average height. He has deep-set eyes and high cheekbones, but his most prominent feature was his snub square-shaped nose and pointed beard. A knight? Naruto deduced instead of answering his question. Naruto also noted the man was badly hurt, looking at his limp left leg and blood on his side. Jelil who stood by his side perked up, we're not your enemy, please lower your sword sir. Naruto glanced at his disciple, no doubt Jelil took initiative to speak in his place because he really wanted to deal as little as possible with people of higher status like this man. The man reluctantly sheathed his sword and looked back and forth between Naruto and Jelil. Naruto resisted his urge to faceap him because the knight undoubtedly noticed authoritative tone in Jelil's young voice and perhaps speculated the boy was a noble and he was Jelil's bodyguard. He saved that nice background story in his mind for future use though. The man's gaze fortunately didn't linger long on the men directed to green-haired girl they saved. Hisui Haim. He exclaimed. The young girl perked up at her name and looked up from the clone's arm. Sir Arcadios. She said happily. Oh, no. He had enough dealing with royalty and Jelil supposed to be the last prince he had to deal with. His mental rant was interrupted when Arcadios fell on his knees, slumped against the nearest wall. Sir Arcadios. Hisui wiggled out of the clone's arms and ran towards her knight. Arcadior smiled at his princess, then looked up to Naruto, this is Princess Hisui, the crown princess of Fiori. Naruto knew where this was going and he braced himself. I beg of you sir, please take her to safety. Princess's visit to her retired caretaker's home village is a secret, so we can't expect reinforcement from capital, and small troops I brought with me were killed in the skirmish. That explained why the princess was in this rural village and a dead old woman. Well you see Naruto began. However before Naruto could continue talking, the man had prostrated himself on the floor to beg. Please. The future of this country is in your hand. Naruto didn't want it to be in his hand, hell no. I beg you. As a knight, I beg you as my fellow knight to save my princess. Naruto was not heartless, but he was so not looking for problem with saving people left and right. However at this point he was already looking at them, a crying and prostrating knight before him, 2 confused disciples by his side, and the whole village crying for help, he couldn't look away and off to his own merry way, no matter how much he wanted to do that. Screw it. He mumbled under his breath and then looked down to the kneeling knight. I hereby accept your request, Sir Arcadios, however. He listed down his conditions, which he actually asked for his disciples' safety, especially Jello's later. He actually would have helped Arcadios and Hisui without it, but he didn't want repercussion from his heroic acts. He ignored gasp of surprise from Arcadios when he put up a strong bluish barrier of chakra around them and said, I will leave this barrier and my disciples with you, don't come out until I come back for you. Arcadios nodded stiffly. Shushu. Juvia called timidly, be safe. We will be waiting. Jello added. Naruto smiled at them and vanished in a swirl of leaves and wind. Naruto had been in this world for 5 years and he disliked Dark Guild with passion. They were closest counterpart to Missing Nin in this world, and as far as he was concerned, they were either Xerus devotees or criminals with too much ego banded together for no good reason. As much as he hated the latter, the one he reserved his utter loathing was the first, Xerus devotees. He had a bad experience against them. He was no hero and definitely not ally of justice, so he won't go out to hunt them, as long as they didn't practice their cruelty in front of his eyes, and he will be happy to leave them and their mad devotion for a man that already dead for 4 centuries. They were too much trouble to deal with, but unfortunately being the biggest trouble magnet since Senju Hashirama in history of Konoha, he had to be involved one way and another, with the most troublesome bunch in Earthland next to Fairy Tail. Xerus devotees, these men were not slave traders as he thought at first, although it seemed they gathered people to be their slaves in the end. Kill the adult. Take the children. We need them to build our tower. For our master, Dark Mage Xerif. The thought of them kidnapping kids, robbing them of their childhood and put them through slavery, made his blood boiling. So he transformed to his adult form, dressed in all black with mask that covered half of his face. Then he placed a red fox mask he used in his Anbu days and stepped in front of a dark mage he assumed was the leader of the group. You better stop now. Naruto growled, his feral voice echoed through the village and all humans stopped on their track. The villagers huddled together in fear as magic weapons were pointed at them and they couldn't help but pray the man was their ally. However, this stranger also sounded almost inhuman, his voice instilled fear on them. Their attackers were feeling the same and they hoped the threat implied in that growl was not meant for them. Who the hell are you? The presumed leader snarled. Naruto snorted, he was not amused by how the mage trying and failing to sound threatening. You don't need to know who I am, but to make this conversation easier, you can refer to me as Kitsune. Not original, but who cares? The cult leader snorted, what conversation we will have, Kitsune? A short one, as far as I know killing is frowned upon by Magic Council, but I don't see how knocking all of you out and protecting villagers in the same time would be easy, Naruto mused, especially when you have your goons pointing their weapon at the villagers. HMPH. So I will give you 2 options, leave or die, so make your choice wisely. He seemed amused that Naruto implied that killing them all was a preferable option. For my master, I will choose to die for his glory, but how you will achieve that, Kitsune? Like this. The next thing he knew he saw the fox masked man upside down and the world was also upside down. It was in his last moment he realized it was not the world turned upside down, but his head was separated from his body. In this world, it was unusual to see such a quick and bloody death. So it was understandable the followers behind the beheaded body couldn't move and react fast enough before they met the same fate. The villagers were rooted to the ground as they watched scene of carnage played before their very eyes. Fortunately, the men regained enough sense to shield their young and women from the sight. It was over pretty quickly and almost without resistance from Xerus followers as one by one they were killed swiftly. The villagers were scared, but in the same time they were grateful this man saved them. Naruto held the last man, one he presumed was second in command, by his collar. It was a plump man dressed in gaudy purple robe, squirming like a fish out of water on his hold. Your name? Standard protocol, even though he was no Ibiki and this was not Konoha. G. Gorin. The man stuttered. Naruto cleared his throat, now then Gorin, tell me why you're still following a dead man. What do you hope to achieve? Naruto hissed threateningly. You alone perhaps could be luckier to root in jail instead of hell like the rest of you here. He gestured to mutilated corpses around them. The choices Naruto laid out was an easy pick and the man chose to live. We are building a tower. Our project to revive Master Z. Naruto glared at him warningly, even from small slit of the wagtail mask's eyes was enough to make the man tremble in fear. I mean Dark Mage Xerif. Who reviving the dead? Naruto rolled his eyes, old news to me, he murmured under his breath, and how exactly a building structure can revive a dead man? Gorin trailed off, I have no idea. How typical, leave their goons without a clue of how a freaking tower could revive a dead man. He laughed softly, anything else I need to know? The plump mage shook his head frantically. Oh, too bad, if you have more I will spare you, but unfortunately he trailed off, leaving the rest of his sentence vague. Goran paled, and his face became as white as paper at the implication. I know the location of the towers. Apparently the man was in charge of gathering slaves and transporting them, so naturally he knew all the location, 7 of them in fact. To be honest, he was not that interested to be involved in this Zara fiasco, but knowing how he attracted trouble, it was very likely he needed all he could get about this dark mage Zareth. Besides, he couldn't see the harm of preventing revival of this world of Madara, at least the man was truly dead unlike Madara. Hopefully he was really dead and no one running around using his identity, he had enough of Madara's madness. Towers, so you guys needs more than one tower. If that was the case, he could pay one of it a visit and raise it to the ground. The man opened his mouth to answer, closed it again and about to say something, but Naruto cut him off. Of course you have no clue, so tell me, where are these towers? I promise I will just hand you over to authorities once you finish singing. As commanded, the pathetic man started singing like a tone-deaf canary. After he got everything he wanted from the man, Naruto quickly knocked the man out and tied him up with his restraining seal. He was a shinobi and a liar, but he won't break promise. He quickly vanished with a shunshin with the man tied with him, and he was back to where he left his disciples with Arcadios and Princess Hisui. The knight looked shocked out of his wits when Naruto appeared out of nowhere. It never gets old to surprise people with body flicker. It's done. What is done? The knight asked in confusion. Naruto snorted as his disciples ran towards him in hurry and hugged him. He patted their heads comfortingly before he answered the knight. I finish all of them off except this one. He said as he dropped the gagged and tied man unceremoniously in front of Arcadios. Do me one more favor, please drop this guy in wherever you think he belonged to. I suppose it's Magic Council or Rune Knight's HQ. He nodded again, eyeing the unconscious man cautiously, while Hisui was staring at Naruto and his disciples curiously. I will, sir. Nice, well then we will take our leave. Naruto said as he pulled both of his disciples away with body flicker, away from the knight and the princess. By the next day, Rune Knights and Magic Council were in uproar when they saw the Cherry Blossom Holy Knight Squadron Chief personally delivered man gagged and tied by unknown rune-type magic to Ira. The man also had a note stuck on his forehead, which informing them this man was a Zerus follower and he had interesting informations they had to know as soon as possible. They expected a rough interrogation, as Zerus devotee was so obsessed with their master that normally to get information from them was like milking a stone. However, the man, when asked to tell what he know, he started spilling like a broken dam. He even told them his favorite underwear and what else his interrogator was not interested to know. The man even begged to be put inside a cell as soon as possible and hurtled in his corner as trembling like a wet kitten. Naruto was not pleased when the news was out that the council and Rune Knight were looking for Kitsune. Apparently swearing Arcadios to secrecy was not working, since the villagers were more than eager to share stories about their hero. The Magic Council reluctantly ignored the massacre of Zerus devotees and decided to invite and reward him. He didn't buy that they were not going to arrest Kitsune because he killed as self-defense. Naruto implanted that on Goran's mind just in case and to protect innocent villagers, but to reward him for his service. He decided to ignore the call to accept the reward, as frankly he was not interested and he had a feeling the council wanted his service. Hell no, he had better things to do for himself, and working for Magic Council was not one of it. They were incompetent in keeping their people in check and put too much effort in keeping status quo with Barum Alliance. They got it that they didn't want to get in open conflict with Barum Alliance, but at this point Naruto thought they had to realize it was called ignorance and not acting with caution. It was not until 3 months later Naruto had to change his mind. 3 months later. For the first time since he adopted Juvia and Gel, Naruto was alone. He had left his disciple in their log house, surrounded by strongest safety seals to do some indoor training under his clone supervision. The reason he left Juvia and Gel wasn't because he needed an alone time, he had enough of that in his childhood to last 7 lifetimes. It was because Juvia and to some extent Gel, they were depressed. It was not a big deal at first, but he noticed sometimes they brooded for no good reason and spaced out when he gave them time out. In Gel's case, Naruto could tell it was just homesickness catching up on Gel at last. The boy would grow out of it sooner or later, so he wasn't worried. Juvia on the other hand was a pretty serious case of depression and he had seen this on Itachi back when they had a long-term mission in a land near Omegakure when sun didn't show itself for months. Juvia was getting sluggish and she was almost struggling to keep going. It was not like she was getting lazy, but something dampened her mood and she had a hard time to be as active as her usual self. She also ate more, well usually she couldn't even finish more than one portion and lately she had at least 2 to 3. Gel at first didn't notice, but now the boy was convinced Juvia was sick and begged him to give her rest from her training. The moment Gel noticed, Naruto realized this was getting out of hand and went as far as Crocus to search for one particular item just to find it was never invented in Earthland. So he was forced to figure out a substitute with using sealing arts, so here he was, under the sun, and on top of Maya-like pyramid structure. This was the ruin that in legend was called the Temple of Sun because it bathed under sunlight for thousands of years. Inwardly he apologized to Earthland and its inhabitants for defacing an ancient and historical structure as he began to carve a giant seal on top of it. He could have done this somewhere else, but he wanted it to work with best condition, so he needed place that rich with ethereal and bathed in sunlight continuously. All for the sake to get his beloved disciple, Juvia, a replacement for light therapy lamp. Yes, Juvia's sickness was actually sad, seasonal affective disorder that also plagued Itachi for a while back then. He didn't really get the syndrome, and he was really worried when Itachi of all people grumbling at him that the world could go to hell for all he care. He and Shisui panicked back then because if the Uchiha Itachi didn't care about world peace, it meant early apocalypse. Turned out Itachi was on sad and he got better after they got him that therapy lamp. Although Itachi was so ashamed of what he did in his delirious state that he couldn't face Naruto and Shisui for weeks. As for Juvia. What he didn't get was why Juvia caught it now. Well, the lack of sunlight was one of possible causes. She had never got sunlight since she was born, so why now? Shouldn't she immune to this? Then again it explained why she was so negative before she met him. Besides, since she would always be with him, Naruto thought they needed this sunlight before he and Gel fell to the same thing. It was a rare thing, but you never know. The mechanic of this seal was pretty simple, and the design was something he based on what his grandfather had done before to store nature energy. This gigantic seal would store light energy and then transmitted that energy in emitter seal. The reason the storing seal was so big was because the efficiency of the storing process was really bad, just around 10 to 20% of original light, so he needed large surface. But right now, I need to clean everything up. Defacing this historical ruin was bad enough, so at least he could use concealing seals, so it would be covered up and hidden. He bit his forefinger and a small drops of blood poured in, and he began to draw his seals in the air. It was always possible to draw seals in the air with the right amount of chakra and control, however in Earthland, it was easier because the air was rich with energy. One by one he finished his sets of concealer seal and layered it around the sunlight gatherer seal. He was in the middle of drawing the last set of security seals when he sensed someone approaching and his eyes were wide in shock. He didn't know who, but this new presence smelt like trouble. He only had time to don his kitsune disguise fell to his battle stance. If worse comes to worse, he just had to kill the intruder. Then he saw a man who probably as old as Sandaime walking up the steps. The old man was dressed in dark clothes with armored shoulder pad and gauntlet. He also wore a cape with a symbol that resembled heart with hat wings and spikes. Naruto suspected the old man was a member of Dark Guild and instead of attacking him, the man was gazing at him in shock and as much as it unnerved him admiration. "Who are you?" the man asked. Naruto didn't move from his spot, scrutinizing the newcomer. The man was powerful and even if he was back to his full strength, this man could give him a run for his money. However, judging from the man's reaction, it was unlikely he would be attacked for no reason. "I believe it's a common courtesy to introduce yourself first," Naruto answered in clipped tone. "My apologies," then the older man said hastily. "My name is Hades." Okay, the way this man behaved was really unnerving. He didn't expect this stranger to apologize just for that. Hades looked almost gleeful and Naruto was 100% freaked out. "I am the master of Grimoire Heart." That explained the symbol and why this old man was so powerful, but what business this man had with him. No, he'd better not involved with this man when his power was still at this level. Naruto harumphed, diminishing the floating half-finished seal before him. "Unfortunately, I have no interest to introduce myself to you, Hades of Grimoire Heart. I shall take my leave." "Wait. Zeref. Wait." Hades called out frantically. Naruto's eyes widened in shock beneath his mask. "What did you just call me?" Hades was startled for a moment by his question before the mage started to rub his long beard as if he understood Naruto's question. "You're still asleep, I see, but it's fine. I am still looking for keys for your resurrection, Zeref, and I swear you will be back to power." "What?" This man seriously thought he was Zeref. "I am not Zeref. In case you live under a rock you should know he is dead for 400 years. "You're very much alive," he corrected. "I thought you're somewhere in Tenryjima," he murmured under his breath, but loud enough for Naruto to hear. "But you're here." Naruto groaned inwardly. "I am, but Zeref isn't. You're from a dark guild, so you should know a lot of your people are trying to revive him." "You can't revive people who are not dead," Naruto pointed out, "unless you really believe Zeref is an immortal, which has lived for 400 years. Please, not that." He had enough of that immortal crap. He had enough of Madara. The looks of pure ecstasy in his face said he believed that. "You're mad." Naruto pointed out the obvious. "Especially since you think I am Zeref. But your magic signature can't lie. I can feel it, it's like with magic I feel from your artifacts." Hades insisted. His magic signature. Chakra. He suppressed that as much as he could, so the only chakra this man sensed was his chakra that he used to make seal must had a little of Juby's on it. Did this man claim Juby's chakra felt alike with Zareth? He looked so sure, and if this man was as obsessed with Zareth as any other devotees he had seen before, it was not a joke. I am leaving. He growled threateningly at Hades, who was still at trance that he met Zareth. Don't you dare to follow me. Hades nodded, of course, as you command. The old man babbled some more about keys he gathered and promised to wake him from his slumber. Naruto ignored him as he left the ruin with body flicker. Naruto was horrified by the new piece of information he received, and he had no wish to be in presence of a man who believed he was Zareth any longer. 3 days later he sent a letter to inform the council that he was going to pay them a visit in 2 days. He was going to accept their request of audience with him. They better make this worth his time, or he swore he would scheme to overthrow current magical government or something. Damn it, why oh why only useless people sit in high places. At this point he even missed Danzo, at least even though his method was inhuman, Danzo made sure those inhuman methods gave results. Magic Council had almost none. Naruto inwardly felt like kicking himself on the head because the moment he started to miss the old coot, there was something seriously wrong with him. Anyone know how old Hisui is? For a moment I am tempted to pair her with Ito Jello lol, but that's Disney's cliche ha ha ha. So seriously, whoever think of this crack pairing? And also imagine green hair meet blue lol. It seems some people love her and want her to pair up with Naruto. Well, I decide to put the line within ship tease for Naruto. Hades' character when he meet Naruto is based on little interaction he had with Zareth in Tenru arc. He was like a fanboy who met his idol, and in some perspective it's hilarious xddd. Fourth tale. Council and Saint. In the short time of knowing Uzumaki Naruto, his mentor, Gel, had noticed that his master was pretty paranoid. Actually measuring his master's paranoia in that scale was like saying his father was a little mad. Just from simple explanation of security shushu planted in their log house, Gel had to shamelessly admit that Adola's palace had nothing on security measure his master put. Gel wondered what prompted his mentor to go to such length because Naruto was not from his world, an unknown entity, and supposedly he had no enemies in Earthland. Naruto's answer when he asked why they needed such tight security. It was out of freaking habit that already in his flesh and blood. Gel couldn't help but feel depressed with how lightly his mentor put a paranoia as mere habit. Gel in the end just get used to it, like get used to see cloudy skies in daily basis. Spartan training his master put he and Juvia through, sealing arts and everything else in this new life in Earthland. However, that day after his master went off to find something to cure Juvia's sickness, something called sad, said his master. The blonde returned with unreadable expression. He also redoubled their securities measures, and Gel thought their house couldn't be more secure. Something happened and it shot their master's paranoia level sky high. Juvia of course didn't notice, she was not feeling well after all. Their master assured him she was fine, as by today when asked, Juvia was still care for the world to keep rotating on its axis. Gel wisely not questioned his mentor about it. Naruto knew what he was doing, as his disciple Gel had to believe in him. Juvia was indeed feeling better when Naruto gave her a lacrima lamp that could shine very brightly, and the change had been pretty quick according to Naruto. That was one thing out his list of problem, Juvia was getting well. However, his master just had to bring another problem to the table, and as much as Gel had faith in Naruto, when the Prince of Adolas heard Naruto announced he was going to have a visit to Magic Council, Gel had to question that decision. Why, he asked when he was having one-on-one session training with Naruto. Those peoples were just going to try to exploit his master, and worse, they wanted to arrest him for killing so many criminals, never mind he did it to save lives. Naruto ran his fingers through his golden mane exasperatedly, because there's something I found that I can't leave alone. He answered vaguely. Like Juvia and I? Gel queried. Naruto shrugged, chuckling softly. Gel, you and Juvia are my disciples, you are just not something I can't leave alone, you know. Gel flushed a deep red. Deep down he was still insecure that perhaps Naruto took he and Juvia in out of kindness and obligation. Well, considering my character, I guess a lot of my closest companions felt insecure of my reason to care for them. Gel sputtered, I didn't mean to. It's fine. Naruto assured the blue-haired boy, I can't blame anyone to feel that way in regards to me, because all my life I have driven by my sense of duty. He closed his eyes, so much that even I doubted my own feelings sometimes and wonder if I ever care genuinely, but you see, he looked at Gel in the eye, and the younger boy couldn't look away as his master's cerulean eyes pinned his. I will tell you what I told my precious peoples in my world. If it's for you, I will gladly throw away my duties. My duties means nothing if I hurt you for it. Gel's eyes went wide in shock, but Naruto hummed, "Gel." He closed his eyes. "You and Juvia are my future, my disciple who I will pass my knowledge and will on. That's why I promise you that I will always be by your side, even if the whole world is against you." He had been promised the same by his friends back then, and that was what supported him throughout his harsh life. He could endure until he finished his last task for Shinobi World, and he wished the same for his disciple, for them to believe he would always be by their side to face their darkness and the world. Gel's eyes began to water and he hastily wiped it away. "Shushu, you're too selfless." "Oh really?" Naruto said, raising an eyebrow. "I think I am pretty selfish, so selfish that I will condemn the whole world if it means I can protect those I hold dear." He sighed wearily, "I have been alone for so long, Gel." Naruto raised his forefinger and in reflex, Gel covered his forehead with his hands. "I am a liar, but I have never break my promise, and I will not start now." He waved his forefinger, "So, I will promise you that I will tell you the truth, everything after I finish my business with the Magic Council." Gel swallowed, "Everything?" He echoed as his hand slowly loosened from his forehead. Naruto nodded, "Everything?" He repeated. "Really?" Naruto nodded again, and faster than he could blink Gel's forehead was poked again. "Yep, and you let your guard down." Gel opened his mouth, closed it again, and it repeated several times before he could let out an enraged scream. "Shisu." Naruto just rolled his eyes as Gel in rare moment of childishness hit his chest repeatedly, whining about being poked again. "And I have given you plenty of warning about letting your guard down around me, and you did it anyway, only idiots do that, and I will keep poking you until you learn. Stop poking me already." Juvia watched her master poking Gel again, and her older brother was whining again about it. Juvia wondered why Gel didn't like Shishu's forehead poke. It didn't really hurt and kinda nice. Magic Council HQ, ERA. Magic Council was main ruling body of the entire magic world, and the council possessed almost utmost control over magical population. The council ruled all of the legal guilds scattered throughout Earthland, overseeing them and keeping them in check, and they are responsible for the events caused by mages, also possessing the right to punish mages who break the law. In short, they were the government body and also law and magical population. Naruto had seen what they had achieved over the years, and frankly, he was not impressed. Magic Council's power was borderline absolute, they could declare white as black if they wanted, but for all power they held, they relied heavily on their reputation to keep their position. Considering how long one could hold the seat was not limited until one deemed not suitable or retired. This kind of system could work in Warmonger world and in militant village like his, but in magical world it had too many flaws. Power was focused to a small number of mages, and it was doubtful how this small number could represent magical population's will as a whole. It would be more efficient if they. Naruto shook his head in attempt to clear his head from scheme of overthrowing current government. He didn't come here for that. He had vowed to start fresh, and the last thing he needed was repeating his past. After Jubi reconstructed his body, he had seen so many marks made by his past had been erased as well, his calloused hands, scars, and one of it was 6 whisker-like mark on his cheeks. Something Kurama made when he was in his mother's womb just to piss her off. Even though Kurama saw it as an ultimate prank on his mother, Naruto was quite fond of those. It made him distinctive and a prominent mark people recognized him by. Then again, he was determined to start a new adventure, and Kurama would be mad if he brooded over losing his whiskers of all things. Now, he had to face politics once again. It was inevitable, and this time he would do things differently. He had promised the council to see them at 2 in the afternoon, and as much as he wanted to waltz in there in shinobi style, he'd rather they didn't know he was a master of infiltration. So he went to receptionist and announced his presence and appointment as if it was the most normal thing in the world. The frog-like creature was shocked out of his wits when a blond man in fox mask said he was Kitsune and the council was waiting for him. The frog called for rune knights, they nervously inspected him for weapons. He let them, although inwardly he rolled his eyes at the stupidity of trying to do that to a seal master who had storage seal to conceal his weapon. After they were assured he was weaponless and Naruto wisely kept his comment to himself, he let them to escort him to the audience room. Time to face the same old pompous geezers who thought their age told them everything to know in the world. Damn, he was so not going to enjoy this old routine. When a man dressed in all black, a long black coat with a mask that covered half of his face and on top of it another fox-like mask. They had a lot of expectation and an unhealthy amount of fear when they expected Kitsune. This was after all a man who slaughtered over 100 of Zerus followers in one night, leaving a trail of dead bodies in his wake. The man strode inside the hall gracefully, not regal way of a noble or proud stride of a knight, but something more subtle and silent. An instant they realized they were not dealing with random mage, but something dangerous. "So Org," the second seat councilman began. "You're Kitsune." The man gave him a curt nod. "I am." His voice was not smooth but heavy and distinctive. Org cleared his throat. Please remove your mask, Kitsune, we would like to speak with you face to face. Kitsune shrugged, I expected that. He muttered as he removed his bird mask, revealing cerulean blue eyes and bright golden hair, then he pulled the black cloth mask down and revealed the rest of his face. They were surprised to see a very young face, a boy no, a young man with bright yellow hair and cerulean blue eyes. His skin had healthy tan, with lean but muscular body that made him borderline androgynous. In overall he was a very attractive young man that would make head turns, and he definitely not fit with the image of dark and vicious killer. As if reading their mind, Kitsune muttered, appearance can be deceiving, and I am older than my look. Looking at their curious and hesitating body language he added. My apologies, but I didn't come to enlighten you about my personal information. Michello, the middle-aged man with cat ears-like hairstyle seethed. How dare you? You speak in the presence of Magic Council members, young man. Michello. Org warned him, control yourself. He hissed, locking eyes with the seething fool. Silently he reminded Michello they weren't talking to ordinary mage they could judge as they pleased, this was the man who slaughtered over 100 of Xeris followers and came out unscathed. This was the man who in spite of all rune knights guarding the room, could kill all of them if they provoked him. There was a reason why all councilmen present as thought projection, because before them stood a monster. They invited him in hopes the man in spite of body trails he left in his wake could be an asset instead of a thorn on their side. Org cleared his throat, so is Kitsune, your real name? Even though you're not here to be interrogated, at least we would like to know your real name. The young man shook his head, it's not my real name, and it's part of courtesy to give you my name since I know yours. Org raised an eyebrow at that. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Uzumaki, Org repeated, a foreign name. At any rate we would like to reward you for your service, thanks to your information we are able to locate those towers and destroy it before Xeris follower could complete their evil plan to revive their master. I am glad to hear that. Uzumaki said sincerely, the part you managed to prevent their plan I mean. He added. I am not interested in reward of jewels you offered, I am not here for that. This young man wanted something else and that made them even more nervous. What a killer like him would want from them. I want information. He answered their silent question. About this Tower of Heaven, is it a magic so great it could revive the dead? They froze and Naruto knew he had hit a jackpot. So it's not just mad rambling of that devotee. He drawled with a smirk. And please don't misunderstood, I am not interested on magic that could revive the dead, if anything I have my bad share of dealing with that kind of magic. That got him the reaction he wanted, they were in uproar and their fear of him flew out of the window an instant. What? How did you come to know such a vile magic? This time it was the lone councilwoman who spoke, her name was Belno. I am the one who sealed that magic. Uzumaki informed them coolly, it's a lost magic now and will forever be lost, and before you ask, no I can't perform this magic, I know the basic procedure, but I would rather cut my own hands rather than committing such atrocity. He said with disgusted voice. The dead should stay dead. He said with finality in his voice. That's why instead of rewards of jewels you promised, I'd rather take information. Org leaned in cautiously, this young man was good. He shot their temper sky high, but in the same time he endeared them with his knowledge. That Naruto Uzumaki was not a mere vicious killer, but he also knowledgeable. What information? Yujima, the council member with funny-looking had asked. What he said next chilled them to the bone, Zarif, give me all information you have about him, his origin, demons and life, everything. Preposterous. Michello cried furiously, followed by other council members that cried different words, but mostly the same thing. They thought Kitsune had demanded something they couldn't give out lightly. Org on the other hand steeled himself and asked, what will you do with that information? He was interested in Zarif. Right at the go, this man warned them that he was a double-edged sword. Uzumaki smiled at them, it was a gentle smile that would make them lower their guard if they didn't know this man was a vicious killer. First, it's merely to satisfy my curiosity. Before another cry of outrage could fill the hall he continued, second, after the last stunt I pulled, I need to know my enemies. The young man didn't know how much he relieved them when he refers Xeris followers as his enemies. So you're going to deal with Xeris men? Naruto shrugged, as much as I want to crawl under a rock, I suppose it's impossible to do so after what I did. He muttered softly, however the stance I will take against them is not an open conflict, I am just one man after all. The one-man army, they added inwardly. I don't want to deal with them if I can help it, Uzumaki admitted honestly, since you the powerful Magic Council deign not to do so. Which meant, because you are not doing anything, why should I? I will just protect my own hide. However, Org was not sure this man was egging them on for something else. So much beating around the bush and Org was not sure this unknown entities wouldn't outlast them in battle of wits and decided to end the pleasantries. Let's cut this short. Org began, you're a very powerful mage and judging from your mannerism you know your way around politics. he concluded. You also well aware we're wary of your power and your history. The short history in which I slaughter over 100 of Xerath's followers you mean? Uzumaki muttered in neutral tone. Contrary to what you believe, I am not a merciless killer. I killed if I must. That night the choice is between saving hundreds of villagers and the future of their children over the life of men who devote themselves to a dead man. He was asking them back, would you rather he chose to leave those villagers to their death? Because killing was forbidden by law. Those who takes life shall be ready to have their life taken in the same way Naruto quoted his old friend. I am never proud of myself to kill people, no matter what reason I have to do so. He took a deep breath. Honored councilman and councilwoman. Naruto began, I have a proposal for you. There was something in his voice and body language that lulled them to false sense of security, to trust him blindly. So they listened his proposal and not even Michello dared to interrupt. His offer was tempting, very tempting and almost in tune with what they wanted from him initially. However even thought they got what they wanted, they didn't have any control over him. That was too dangerous, an attack dog that had no leash was too dangerous. But Uzumaki-san Yujima began, you're saying that? Uzumaki nodded, what I am going to offer you is not my service, but an alliance. I am not going to work for you, I will work with you. Leiji, the councilman that wore sunglasses stood up. There's a world difference between working for us and with us. They'll know the lone councilwoman nodded in agreement. A tempting proposal, but you have no ties with us in the end. Exactly. The blonde agreed wholeheartedly. I am willing to work with you but not for you, and that's all I can offer as frankly I have no obligation to offer you anything. I may have magic, but I am not working as a mage, I don't have a mage license he listed on, last time I checked according to your law, that's enough to consider me not under your authority. He did his research, they thought irately. The only government that have power over me would be Fiori Kingdom as I am a citizen, and I recall Uzumaki trailed off with a smirk, they owe me a life debt. Which basically meant, if they think he had no political power they were wrong. He could have it if he wanted to. The freaking royal family of Fiori owed him a life debt. In fact King Toma had been hounding them day and night about his daughter's savior. As soon as the news that the kitsune made his presence known to Magic Council was out, the king undoubtedly would request the same. Last time they heard, the king was arranging a festival in his honor. If the royal family of Fiori got him in their rank, or worse, he became their royal mage. Magic Council would really lose him. They could pass on having powerful mage under their thumb, but losing this kind of man to a royal family was too dangerous. The long pregnant silence filled the room as the council members contemplated their options. Well, so what's your answer, honored elders? He asked them with an angelic smile that betrayed his reputation as vicious killer. Org gritted his teeth as he and the rest of council members came to one decision. We will not give you our answer for now. He raised his forefinger, we have one condition, just one, which if you can fulfill it we will accept yours. Uzumaki frowned at that, no doubt he saw through that in spite of being the one who wanted him and not the other way around the council, still wanted to be seen as the one who had upper hand. Name it. Which meant he would listen but doesn't mean he will accept. Here it is, we would like you to. 1 week later. Naruto had to wonder if he was going mad that he obliged their stupid condition. Seriously, if it was up to him he'd rather to crawl under a rock and never be seen in public ever again. That was rendered impossible after he slaughtered those madmen and met another madman called Hades. The latter had not hunted him down yet, but it was just about time considering that man thought he was Xerath. He had to seal off old Jubi chakra from his system because he didn't want his power to be recognized as Xerath-like. He had enough to be seen as monster in his childhood. The point was, he couldn't hide anymore. So he'd rather to stand in the middle of spotlight and keeping his disciples safe in the same time. The irony of him being a shinobi but unable to stay in the shadow. Which was why he obliged to their request, as ridiculous as it was too. The man Magic Council brought into Rune Knight's training arena was looking at him smugly, an arrogant expression firmly in place. Great, it was an old man I'm holier than thou attitude. My name is Jose Porla. Make him to fight a wizard saint to show his power. And of all 10, the first who jumped at the opportunity was this man. He was a slim man with long, straight black hair reaching down to his shoulders and a thin mustache, a sadistic smile bloomed in his dark-colored lips, which frankly creeped Naruto out. It was almost as bad as Orochimaru's. Nice to meet you, boy. Naruto rolled his eyes beneath his mask, nice to meet you too, Jose Porla. He decided to not give this man a shred of respect since he was paid none. My name is Uzumaki. The man scowled, openly showing his displeasure. When I am offered opportunity to face the famed kitsune was expecting more. He raised an eyebrow beneath his mask, had he been a child he was years ago, he would cheekily ask more what and what else to drive the man up to the wall. Perhaps. He muttered, turning his back on Jose and walked a good 10 feet away from the man. You will see more later. He said, glancing momentarily to the council's viewing booth. This arena reminded him a lot to one used in Konoha for Chunin exam, the same circular arena with high wall, but this one was indoor. Magnolia City, Fairy Tale Guild Hall. Makarov sighed exasperatedly as he reread the letter council sent him last week and one that arrived few days ago. What he is thinking? That Oze. The lone S-rank mage of his guild frowned, something wrong, master. The wizard saint snorted, well do you know Kitsune? It only took Gilderts a few seconds to recall the name that it became the talk for months. The one who makes Magic Council and King of Fiori running all over the continent like headless chicken in search of him for the last 3 months. Gilderts drawled, scratching the back of his head. Makarov nodded, yes, the same Kitsune, the man who slaughtered over 100 Xeros followers in one night. Makarov droned on. He shows up in front of the Magic Council, no more goose chase. What about him? Gilderts asked curiously. The council can't arrest that man, he is hailed as a hero by Fiori for saving their princess. It would be bad for their reputation, won't it? He shook his head, according to Yajima-san, it's not that, it's the opposite. His expression turned grim, it seemed the council wanted him to work for them. Gilderts frowned deeply, makes sense, they can't detain him in spite of how dangerous he is, so they want to put a leash on him. Yeah, but according to Yajima-san, things didn't work out as they expected, hence the council sent this letter to all wizard saints from rank 5 to 10, requesting if any of us would volunteer to fight Kitsune as some sort of test. He raised an eyebrow at that, test for what? And who would want to try battling a man with that kind of reputation, one that made in single night nevertheless. Oze apparently he will never miss a chance to make a name. Makarov muttered, other saints were interested, but Oze volunteered first. Makarov himself was not interested, but he was curious. He won't condone killing, and this man slaughtered over 100, but if this man killed to save lives, could he say this man was evil or something between good and evil? Oze sent out his shade, ghostly soldiers roaming the room. He was going to watch the famed killer to run around like headless chicken from his shades. Kitsune didn't run around like expected, in fact he took his time to observe the shades moving past hauntingly, then dodge them with minimum movement. It almost looked like he was lazy and didn't try hard at all. Slowly Oze increased the number of his shades, changing their flight pattern slightly, and at last he found an opening, and the masked man was caught by a shade that sneaked from under the floor. Humph. Oze snorted, and that's all here, he muttered under his breath as his shade sucked in. The man's magic was sucked in by his shade slowly and painfully. May voice coming from his side hummed, so your shade have power to weaken your opponent, draining their life force, perhaps. Yes, aren't they? Wonder. Oze opened his mouth, then promptly closed it again as he looked to the side. He screeched when he saw Kitsune completely unharmed, fit and standing few feet away from him. How did you escape them? And since when you're there? Kitsune paused for a moment before he answered. Your shades is attacking a thought projection the whole time. He muttered, and I have been here since you're cackling to yourself. Oze fumed, die. He screamed as he extended his right arm sideways and generate several of his ghosts around it, which started circling it in spirals and unleashed them towards Kitsune. Dead wave. Much to Oze's shock, Kitsune didn't dodge, suddenly a golden chain sprouted from his sleeve and swatted Dead Wave like a fly to the side. Darkness magic, huh? Chain magic? Oze muttered under his breath. Kitsune smirked under his mask, it seemed the council had appointed an opponent with a worse compatibility against him. Chains spilled out, cascading waves to all direction. Noise of crinkling metals filled the arena, overwhelming senses of those who heard it, as if it was an innocent melody of lullaby. The tip of the golden chains resembled a comma, and the chain was light golden color. It was a mesmerizing sight to behold as the chains as if dancing in the air before the tip sunk on the wall of the arena in zigzag, creating a rose-like pattern. Oze stepped back when the masked man jumped lightly to the air and landed on one of the chain, standing with perfect balance. If before you're trying to trap me in your swarm of shades, now it's my turn. The wizard saint didn't know what he meant but found out soon when one of the shades touched the chain. It writhed as if in pain before it combusted in small explosion and vanished without trace. How? The element of this magic is darkness, right? He queried mischievously, one of his chain hover above his arm. The element of my chain is holy, it's meant to subdue those with darkness nature and demonic kind. Council's viewing area. Did you see how he moves? Leiji muttered in disbelief. Yuri shook his head, move. I don't think we even notice he is standing beside Oze until he spoke. Or grubbed his temple. It's not much a stretch to see this man is capable to slaughter so many of Xeros men. They could almost imagine them standing like Oze did while he crept up behind them. Ijima eyed the chain magic user skeptically. For someone who shrouded in mystery and darkness, his magic is of holy nature, how ironic. Elno nodded in agreement and his comment about sealing magic that could revive the dead, perhaps he is an exorcist. Or type of mage in that nature, Org added. But in that case matching him up with Oze is pointless. HMPH. Michello harumphed. Do we have so little faith in one of 10 wizard saints we choose ourselves? He queried. I get it that Uzumaki have advantage against Oze, but it's not like Oze will just roll over, he is older and have more experience. He pointed out. Org frowned at that. Well, perhaps, but I doubt someone who can killed over 100 of men in one night is lacking in experience. Oze was growing angrier and angrier as his shades reduced to nothing each time they touched the sacred chain. Damn you. Not even with increasing their magical power and combining them made any difference, they still couldn't get past Kitsune's web of chain. Try something new, Oze Porla. Kitsune suggested in solemn voice, throwing your shades around to break my chain is pointless. Be quiet. Oze hissed, I will take you down. Don't you dare to underestimate me. I am one of Wizard Saints. Master of Phantom Lord. He roared as he unleashed a dead wave. The masked man titled his head to the side, a number of chains shot up and wrapped around the dark energy, and it vanished in a blink of an eye. I have never underestimated my opponent. Your title that granted by council hold no meaning to me. If it was even possible, Oze's temper rose to a new height. How dare this, nobody mocked him so. That's it. Enough playing around, he would blow this mongrel from the face of Earthland. Die. Dark pulse. Oze moved his hand in an arc before him and a dark energy exploded. This time the power in his attack was not to harm any longer, but to kill, as the darkness energy emitted was destroying the surrounding area. Council's viewing area. Have you gone mad, Oze Porla? Org roared, that attack just now is meant to kill. Yajim gritted his teeth in anger. He couldn't believe a wizard saint would dare trying to kill someone in front of their very eyes. He had never agreed with granting Oze the title of wizard saint. The man was powerful, but he was cruel, petty, with a jealous streak a mile wide. The reason Oze had always butting head with Makarov, especially with Fairy Tail's budding fame. Michello gritted his teeth. Oze to do this in front of council members, not to mention if not for the wall that fortified by magic, that attack would have killed them too. Ijima glared at the caddy-haired old man. I think we should be more concerned about Uzumaki-kun's safety. There's no way he could survive that. Belno yelled. Call the Rune Knights. Arrest that murderer. Halt. Org raised his hand, stopping the Rune Knights from moving towards the arena. Look. Oze panted heavily, catching his breath after he used most of his magic for his last attack. He didn't care how exhausted he was, but that scoundrel was dead. Dead. He won't be able to mock Oze Porla anymore. Ha 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 ha, that's what you get for underestimating me. Of course, no response, as Kitsune was dead after that mighty attack of his. However, a deep cold voice tinted with annoyance answered him, once again coming from beside him. You never listen. Seriously, I told you I will never underestimate my opponent. Oze slowly turned to the side, and he was shocked out of his wits to see Kitsune standing right beside him and alive. He walked backwards until his back collided with the wall, pointing a shaking finger at the masked man. How? Kitsune patted his clothes. It was a little singed, but he was unharmed. After he finished dusting non-existent dirt from his clothes, he pointed at the ceiling, where his web of chains was glinting under the light. I just jumped out of the way. Beside, all of your attack is dark in nature, so it can't reach beyond my sacred chain. Then he eyed his black cloak in dismay. You singed my cloak a little though. Well, what? Attack in that scale and nature won't kill me. He stated bluntly to sputtering Oze. I wouldn't survive until my 17 if I am done in by a simple blast of energy. He muttered under his breath. At any rate, if I interpret the scale and intent of your attack correctly. He trailed off as he circled Oze like a predator would their prey. That last attack was meant to kill me. Oze panted. He almost had no magic power left, and if he risked using his scarce remaining power, it would endanger his life. No. Stay away. I told the council that only those who prepared to be killed should kill. He recited coolly. Since you're ready to take mine, I assume you're ready if I take yours. He muttered as he raised his hand and kanji for elements lit up on his fingertips. Oze's eyes were wide in fear as he saw the black-cloaked man closed into him. No, don't. 5-element seal. The next thing Oze knew, he was sent spiraling towards the wall painfully. The look council members shot him was priceless when he appeared via body flicker inside their viewing booth. Especially since it seemed they believed he just killed Oze Porla and perhaps planning to finish them off too. He is alive, a little dizzy with a bad back pain I bet, but he is very much alive. He informed them with a amused chuckle. And also I sealed his magic so his body go under a great shock and shut down. It's temporary though, and by the time he wakes up he will be able to use his magic again. Ijima sighed in relief. I see, so you're just bluffing about killing him. He shrugged. Well, since you forbid killing, I bet Oze never get threatened to be killed for real. So it was no wonder the guy was so weak against killing intent, he even pissed himself. Beside, I never killed on a whim. As much as Oze Porla annoys me, I see no reason to kill him. The council looked at him as if he had grown another head. He tried to kill you, and you find it annoying. Org drawled in disbelief. Had he not wearing a mask they would have seen him raising an eyebrow at them. And should I not? That was his reaction to their inquiry. At any rate he trailed off, as we agreed on, you will comply to all conditions of our alliance if I manage to defeat a wizard saint. He said and turned around, ready to leave with body flicker. Wait. He narrowed his eyes at them, now what? I defeated Jose, didn't I? He demanded, honored elders, you're not going to back down from our agreement, do you? Org shook his head in dismay, we won't, we have our honor, we agree to your conditions and our alliance. Naruto inwardly sighed in relief. However, looking at how easy you overpower Wizard Saint. Naruto snorted at that, hold it, unlike what it seemed I have a pretty hard time against Jose Porla. He stated with conviction. I used up a lot of magic power to conjure so many chains to create my safe zone from his shades, and if I didn't taunt him to use up his magic power for that attack, that battle will last longer and become a battle of endurance. The one you will ultimately win in the end. Yajima interjected, and before the young man could interrupt him Yajima continued. It's obvious you're younger and powerful, undoubtedly you could outlast Jose, and I am sure, even though you used a lot of power as you said you're nowhere near from depleting your reserve like Jose did. They had a shrewd old man here. Yajima saw through his attempt to hide his real power. Perhaps, but Jose Porla is really unlucky, his element is a bad match against mine. He reasoned again. Had they been lesser individual they would have eat up those words as his attempt to be humble, but this man was anything but that. He was proud but not arrogant and he was not going to lower himself before them. Bad element match, as if they would believe that was the only reason Jose lost against him. The whole time this young man was tugging on Jose's string and the older mage was helplessly playing to his tune and didn't realize it till the end. Even so it's undeniable you defeat him with ease. Belno muttered, we know you're powerful, but now we have seen it with our own eyes. And in light of that we decide. Naruto was really tempted to respond with so what? But looking at their contemplating look, he had a bad feeling where their train of thought went. I refuse. He told them bluntly before Org could finish. Listen first, Uzumaki. It won't change my answer, I refu. Org cleared his throat loudly and ignored Uzumaki's protest. We decide to grant you the title of Wizard Saint as we are short one mage because someone boldly proved he didn't deserve the title. So it was because Jose had mindlessly tried to kill him in front of them and perhaps would have taken them down with him if not for the strong barrier that protected the viewing booth. And also because granting me the title will make it looks like I am working for you. They quieted down at that. Of course, you care too much about public appearance. Michello and a number of temperamental members were ready to blow their top if not for what he said next. If you agree on one more condition in my favor I will accept that title. Just like that he decided to turn the table on them again. We are giving you an honorable title. Michello roared, and you demand our favor to accept it. Naruto snorted, jerking his thumb at unconscious Jose. Well I am not convinced about the honorable part, beside like I said I don't want title or money. The one who get the advantage of me accepting the title is you. Michello was about to explode again if not because of Yajima suddenly roaring with laughter. Ha 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 I think this is enough dancing around the issue, this young man see through us. There's no point convincing him that we are doing him a favor with granting him the title and not for our own convenience. He started to like this old man Yajima, really liked him. Naruto decided inwardly. Very well, name your new condition, Uzumaki. How he loved it when negotiation worked swimmingly. I want you to not arrest Jose for trying to kill me. They didn't expected that of all thing, it's not out of my generous heart, I assure you, but I'd rather he stay in a high visible place of his phantom lord in case he tries something. Oh? Beside I am sure even though you arrest him or even disband his guild for going against your command, you can't hold him prisoner for long because it's a fact that he has not killed anyone yet. He explained with a sigh, I look up in your law, it's pretty lax seriously, and who will bear the brunt when that man is out for blood after I humiliate him in front of you and take his title. So all I ask is for you to lay him down easy for now and give me easier eye to keep an eye on him he muttered. Unspoken you should keep an eye on him for me too. Was loud and clear in his voice that his new title they granted was giving him more trouble than it's worth. We understand. Org muttered in disdain, ignoring the other council members' protest. You're right but remember, you make us ignore our law for this. Naruto just rolled his eyes and inwardly wondering who got him in this problem in the first place. And when they handed him the medal of 10 wizard saints, Naruto couldn't help but tempted to chuck it to deepest pit of a Wagakure. Trust their Shishu to drop the bomb when they least expected it. So Joel eyed the silver medal with clover carving skeptically, you accept? Force 2. Naruto added in annoyed tone. If my old comrades know I am a saint now, they will die of laughter. They had to agree that the title didn't suit their master at all. So, Naruto laughed softly at them, both were nervous and looking at him expectantly. I will never break my promise. Jello shook his head, we know but. If it's hard for Shushu Juvia trailed off dejectedly, we won't pry. How cute they were being considerate for him. Nah, it's eating me up inside to keep the secret, so. He pulled his disciples close to him as he sat on their couch. Juvia squealed in delight as she hugged his right arm, while Gel was bright red because Naruto pulled him to a hug. Once upon a time in faraway world, in the middle of Sea of Tree, a proud shinobi village, Konohagakure stand proudly under the leadership of Yondaime Hokage. The story was mind-blowing, and if they didn't know it was serious and their master won't lie to them about something like this, they would think it was a fairy tale. Their master was always skilled in omitting truth, giving vague answer, speaking of half-truth as if it was genuine truth, but now he was telling them nothing but truth. When I was a baby, my parents blessed and cursed me with a great burden. Uzumaki Naruto was the son of fourth leader of his shinobi village and the heir of Uzumaki clan. His life story began by his birth and how he lost his parents in a blink of an eye. His family was faced by difficult choices and in the end they chose the world and their village over themselves and sacrificed Naruto to seal the demon in his belly. His childhood was lonely one, the whole village he was sacrificed for turned their backs on him with few exceptions. Unfortunately those few, most of them was never around and he was still alone in the middle of crowded village. How could they do that? Jello muttered in disbelief, the moment you were born, you protected them and they scorned you. Juvia bit her lower lip as Naruto didn't answer Jello so she did. It's a human nature to fear power, we can reason all we wanted that it's something we can't control, in the end we're different, we are power, we're frightening them. Naruto sighed exasperatedly at that, and in my world power is almost everything. As much as he hated to admit it, that was the truth. The very reason my world had never achieved true peace, we long and respect power, but in the same time we fear we are ruled by power. And in my generation, the world of shinobi is already too deep, my friends, and I long for true peace, that's why. Gel and Juvia gasped in shock when they heard what he said next, the truth behind the fourth great shinobi war. Naruto could see so many emotions mixed in their expression and he couldn't help but say. I am not a good person, not as good as you believe me to be. Neither of them said anything in response so he continued, I am a cruel person, or rather I am neither good nor evil, I did everything to achieve my purpose thinking, nothing will change if I protect that hollow peace my ancestor established. It'd have to change. But Juvia whimpered, Shushu. You didn't do it with ill intention. You're not a cruel person. Gel was still locked in silence as he waited for Naruto's answer. He shook his head, ill intention perhaps not, but it's selfish. He stated solemnly, because deep down I always held contempt towards the old system that forced me to be the way I was, I hate it so much that I vow to destroy it to pieces. His story was brief and clear, but he was telling them stories of long 17 years that stained by blood and war. And how in the end he made himself the last sacrifice to end the war and destroy the old system that slaved Biju and Jinchuriki to protect a hollow peace. Naruto sounded amused, relieved and a little sad when he told them that in the end of all scheming in the background he had to believe in his peoples, that after a taste of trust in each other that created Shinobi Alliance, they could move on to a better future without Biju and Jinchuriki on their midst as weapon of mass destruction to keep each other in check. Gel was overwhelmed by the story, the world that's so harsh, bloody and full of treachery existed. He knew his own world was harsh, but it was not an ending war like Naruto's was. No wonder Naruto was angry that he tried to change his world on his own, Naruto had done the same, and for all his power he couldn't do it alone. His thought was cut short when Juvia in the end couldn't restrain herself anymore and broke to waterfall tears. He would have drowned by Juvia's tears if not for Naruto pulled out a water drain seal, and Juvia was free to cry her eyes out without drowning them. It's not fair. Juvia cried. Naruto bit down his reflex answer, life is not fair, that would be a very proper response back in Shinobi world, what's not fair, Juvia? She bit her lower lip, Shushu worked so hard for peace and end the war, but how come you never get to enjoy it? It's a happy end for everyone, but you hick. Naruto laughed softly at that, but I do have my happy beginning. He looked at them with gentlest expression in his face. I get to start a new life and adventure with the two of you. I wouldn't wish for a better new beginning for me. Eh? Ouch. Juvia and Gel yelped when Naruto gave them a poke on the forehead. Shushu. Oh come on, Naruto drawled in amused tone, you guys make me happier than any happy ending. They flushed brilliant red at that, Shushu. How could you say such thing without restraint? Gel cried indignantly. That's so. Sappy. Juvia added. And you two didn't come with paperwork, that's the most wonderful part. Naruto added shamelessly. I think that's a pretty happy ending since I am free of that. Shushu. It's Juvia's turn to protest. Don't flatter us and then splash our mood. I will leave the splashing part for you, Juvia. Naruto offered kindly. Shushu. Yep, this was his new happy family. And it's done one of the most difficult chapter to write. Before anyone asked about Naruto being overly powerful in his fight against Oze as shown in this chapter, it's not a fair fight in the first place, and Naruto is a bad match against Oze. As powerful as he is, Naruto can't curbstomp everyone coming his war in FT World Mage and Makarov or Hades caliber could give him a run for his money. Especially since he deprived himself of Jubi chakra. Next chapter. Endless water cycle. Viewer's eyes in instance were drawn towards his fox mask and then to the medal of 10 wizard saints that's sewn to the left arm of his sleeve. He didn't want to show his status off, but the council insisted it was a must and there was no point he had the status without the mark. How fast rumor traveled in magical world didn't help. narrowed her eyes at him suspiciously. Kitsune of 10 wizard saints, what are you doing here? He panted lightly, now he got here he didn't know where to begin. The worst thing was, because of his reputation, was reasonably wary of him, especially because her disciple was right beside her. Of all time he was losing his wit was when he needed it the most. The wizard saint. The dark-haired boy echoed his master. What if Naruto merged with 10 tails in Fairy Tail, and thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys next video.